Good morning. It is Thursday, April 24th. Welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. We have a very packed schedule today with, I believe, 8 different items. Those items are, we'll start off with the budget for WSSC, then utilities, then the general services fleet, then DEP, then recycling and resource management within the solid waste collection and disposal funds, and then the motor pool is in between. There's a lot of things. So let's just hop right into it. So right now we will have a review of the WSSC budget. The Transportation and Environment Committee has been having a lot of discussion about WSSC, about the CIP in particular, and about the fees and charges. And this is, again, incredibly important. And the context for this discussion is that in the fall, the Council approved a spending control cap of 10.2%. The Prince George's Council approved a 9% spending cap. And what WSSC is proposing is a middle ground, which is a 9.8% increase for FY26. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Levchenko to walk us through the rest of the details.
Sure. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the packet, WSSC Water does have a brief presentation that they also provided to the Prince George's Council earlier this month. So I thought it'd be helpful for the committee to get that broader perspective directly from WSSC Water staff who are here today, and they can also introduce themselves while before they present.
Sounds great.
Good morning, Chair Glass, President Stewart, Councilmember Balcom. I am Munetsi Timothy Musara, the Chief Financial Officer of WSSC Water. On behalf of our commissioners, our General Manager, CEO, Keisha Powell, who's with us today, my Team H2O colleagues, will present to you our operating budget for 2026. I'm joined by Letitia Carolina Powell, who is our Budget Division Manager. For FY 2026, we continue to utilize our outcome-based budgeting approach. The outcomes are protecting public health, increasing the use of PAYGO to fund capital projects, enhancing customer assistance programs, continuing our compliance with regulatory mandates, maintaining our AAA bond rating, and continuing to make the required investment in our $9 billion asset portfolio are contributing factors that allow us to address and achieve our budget priorities, which are maintaining compliance with US EPA regulatory mandates, leveraging external funds to supplement rate revenue, promoting environmental justice by ensuring equitable access to our services and programs, enhancing customer experience through education, affordability, reliability, and trust, upgrading and modernizing critical infrastructure, and continuing to invest in Team H2O. In summary, we are requesting a $1.833 billion budget for FY 2026. The operating budget of $1.136 billion is $116 million greater than FY 25, while the capital budget is $95 million less than that of FY 2025. So, what does the budget do? It provides an $8.9 million or a 14% increase to the customer assistance programs, provides funding for customer-side-led water service line replacement. With the outcome-based budgeting and focus on budget priorities, it achieves mission-critical goals, drives efficiencies in operations, and improves service delivery. Key regulatory requirements are addressed: the lead and copper rule, federal drinking water limits for PFAS, which are expected to go into place in 2029, and we are developing a comprehensive PFAS management strategy with this budget as well. The Safe Drinking Water Act requires that we adhere to the standards for contaminants in drinking water, and the Clean Water Act sets quality standards and regulates the discharge of pollutants from point source and regulates the discharge of dredged and filled material into wetlands. The budget carries forward compensation improvements for Team H2O to address stagnant wages, establish a living minimum wage, and improve recruitment and retention to our workforce. It also ensures continued adherence with the financial metrics associated with our AAA credit rating. When it comes to how the funds are spent, it is important to first note that 55% of our costs are non-discretionary. This category includes capital project funding, chemicals, biosolids holding, regional sewage, and heat, light, and power. The allocation of each dollar that we spend is as follows. 41 cents goes to debt service and pay-go, 34 cents to operations and maintenance, which includes facilities, pipe repair and replacement, road repair, customer assistance program funding, customer service, corporate finance, and IT services, and the remaining 24 cents to Team H2O for salaries and wages, employee benefits, and training and workforce development. Given the current volatility of policy and uncertainty in markets, we are monitoring the financial risks summarized on the slide. Operationally, we are preparing for unanticipated increases in costs and unplanned expenditures, looking at scenarios where deferrals may be needed to be made to system repairs and replacement, as well as considering the impact of further declines in consumption and reduced access to external funds. Our key credit metrics will be subjected to stress testing under different anticipated market conditions to ensure that we are in a position to continue to meet the targets with the impacts of potential increases in customer delinquencies factored into this analysis. In the other category, we'll be analyzing the policy impacts from federal, state, and county actions and monitoring how high consumer or customer unemployment rates and other external factors change our short and long-term plans. The FY 2026 operating budget invests in our workforce, strives to improve the internal and external stakeholder experience, continues our water quality track record, builds resiliency into our systems and operations, integrates diversity, equity, and inclusion, and environmental justice into our procurement, EEO, and investment planning process, and increases financial assistance to our customers by $1.1 million of over FY25 levels. The regional sewage disposal costs continue to increase on an annual basis at a pace much higher than inflation. WSSC Water pays for approximately 43% of the operating costs, and we do not directly control this amount. You requested that we provide you an update when we received it, so the update to the regional sewage disposal amounts is as follows. We received notification that the approved budget was $1.6 million greater than what we have in our proposed budget, so we will be looking to address this pressure early into FY 2026. Furthermore, we received a settlement invoice for $6.4 million related to FY 2024 activity that we need to partially absorb in our FY 25 budget. We have been increasing the pay-go or pay-as-you-go allocation over the years in alignment with the 2012 by Infrastructure Funding Working Group Consultants Report recommendations. Pay-go are operating dollars that are used to fund capital projects, and it supplements our debt. Using pay-go improves debt ratios, saves on debt service costs, slows accumulation of long-term liabilities, helps some of the metrics needed to maintain our AAA rating, and also helps lower future rate enhancements. As far as new funding requests, this budget includes $24.5 million, most of which were added through savings identified by the various departments. We have 77 new work year requests included in the FY26 budget, 29 positions support regulatory requirements, 20 positions enhance operations, and 28 positions are budget neutral, that is, converting contract positions to employees. 23 of the 77 work years have been budgeted for 6 months to allow us to fit them within the requested enhancement rate. This slide highlights some of the same service rising costs that have been absorbed in the 26 proposed budget. These are non-discretionary spending items that we are required to fund. The big font numbers represent the increase for FY25, and the small font numbers represent the 5-year average increase. The budget for chemicals had a year-over-year increase of 6%, heat, light, and power 7%, Blue Plains, it was 9%, but now it should be approximately 10%, and health insurance 18%. When looking at how these increases compare to the 5-year averages, chemicals was 6.8%, and heat, light, and power 0.4% less than the 5-year average, whereas increases in Blue Plains and health insurance budgets were 1.4% and 12.5% greater than the 5-year average. So this shows that we must be prepared for this cost volatility in the current and future budgets. Here, we present the sources and uses of the FY26 $1.33 billion operating budget by major category. Increases and decreases are illustrated on the graphs on the right-hand side of this graph. When it comes to customer assistance and community benefits, the FY26 budget continues our commitment to affordability with a $1.1 million or 14% increase in the customer assistance programs. Promise Pay increased by $330,000, the Water Fund by $250,000, and we have $525,000 available for a new assistance program. Other items under the affordability and financial viability priorities are the customer assistance program subsidy enhancement, the plumbing repair assistance program. This is administered by Habitat for Humanity and will help eligible customers repair water leaks that contributes to high bills. There's the continuation of the cap discounts that exempt eligible customers from ready-to-serve charges, provides waivers of the bay restoration fee and late fees, allowing flexible payments of up to 48 months, and provides annual water leak inspection. As it relates to delivering for our customers, as noted earlier, we have more than $8.9 million in financial assistance. There's $228 million allocated to upgrade aging and failing water and sewer mains, $3 million to increase fire hydrants inspections to get us closer to AWWA compliance, $5 million for the expansion of the laboratory to ensure that we are ready to conduct the PFAS monitoring, and our largest single contribution to customers, nearly $34 million to pay for the replacement of private side or customer-owned lead water service lines. Here, we highlight 4 water bill assistance programs available to our customers. Promise Pay allows customers to sign up for affordable and flexible interest-free payments. Our customer assistance program waives fixed fees and provides annual plumbing inspections. The Water Fund allows eligible customers to receive up to $500 per year to apply towards their bills. And the Pipe Emergency Repair Program provides a loan of up to $10,000 to finance the repair, replacement, or diagnosis of water or sewer and property service lines. Furthermore, at the beginning of March, we launched Get Current 2.0, which provides a 50% bill credit for payment of full delinquent amounts and 100% credit of late payment charges and turn-off fees, or a 25% bill credit for a 50% payment of the delinquent amount and completion of a 6-year payment plan. We support the economic output of our 2 counties because 43% of our workforce lives in the service area. In FY24, our work contributed $133 million to 177 businesses in Montgomery and Prince George's counties, of which $88 million was to local, minority, and women-owned businesses. When it comes to our revenue enhancement, as discussed earlier, we presented a 12.2% base case revenue enhancement using same service budget needs. Montgomery County Council passed a resolution supporting a 10.2% revenue enhancement, and Prince George's County supported a 9% revenue enhancement. Whilst we were formulating the proposed budget, we identified increases in non-rate revenue and were able to reduce that top level by 0.4%. And so the budget we formulated and presented to the counties for approval is at the 9.8% revenue enhancement rate. The impact of the revenue enhancement on our customer bills is displayed here. The 9.8% translates into an increase of $8.80 per month, $26.41 per quarter, and $105.64 per year. The average quarterly water and sewer bill for a 3-person household using 145 gallons per day will be $295.86. This amount of $295.86 is significantly less than the average quarterly bill from Pepco, which comes in at $472.74, and that for cellular phone service, which comes in at $423. Over the last 25 years, our cumulative bill impact has been below that of our regional peers, and the amount only reached the point of being higher than the CPI index in 2025. This is our 6-year model that we plan on building the future budgets around. You can see that the increased PAYGO allocation aligns with the 2012 by-county recommendation discussed in the earlier fiscal management slide, and their subsequent decreases in new debt issuance after 2027, along with measured increases to debt service. The long-term, the FY 2026 and future annual revenue enhancement amounts from the long-term fiscal model result in us meeting our financial metrics for each year, meaning that we're in alignment with the credit agency requirements to maintain our AAA rating under this model. This concludes our presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musara, for that presentation. Anything else you all want to present right now? You're good? Okay. Mr. Olchenko?
Sure. So you've got a sort of a big picture of the overall WSSC water budget. I was going to go through my packet and pick out some particular areas of focus for the committee to consider today, some of which you heard already in passing, but I think we want to return to some of those. First, in terms of the overall picture of the budget, page 3 of the memo breaks out the major categories for WSSC's water spending, the approved and proposed. That's where you see the $1.14 billion proposal, as well as the increases in the staffing. Notably there, I think you see the increases are, well, you have increases in all the areas. The two big areas are in the salary and wages, which we can talk about in a little bit, and also in the all other category. You have a significant increase in regional sewage disposal, which is noted here. That does not include some of the additional or more recent information that you heard in the presentation based on the actuals. This is based on projections from some months ago. So they do have some additional costs they have to absorb in that we can talk about. The all other costs, it's important to note in there, the biggest increase in there is in PAYGO. It's about a $43 million increase, as mentioned, to help with the financial metrics and get us closer to where PAYGO was envisioned when they went from 20-year to 30-year debt about a decade ago. Without the PAYGO, the all other category is actually only seeing about a 4.5% increase. So it's very important to keep that in mind, and there, some other charts in the packet break that out. So from staff's perspective, the areas where there could be some adjustment, for instance, to meet some of that additional regional sewage disposal cost, or perhaps if the rate increase does not stay at the 9.8, if the two counties agree on a different rate increase, then the areas where there might be some opportunity would be either in some of the enhanced positions that are noted, or perhaps there could be some marginal adjustment to PAYGO, although we're trying to continue that upward trend in PAYGO to try to accommodate that whatever the rate increase is that the council's agreed to. I did want to note, just on page 5 of the packet, in the county government packets, each department does get a review by our Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. Those reviews do not apply to outside agencies. However, WSSC Water does have a section in its proposed budget dealing with both racial equity, social justice issues, and affordability issues. So I've noted in the packet for your reading enjoyment later a lot of comprehensive information in there about where things stand with regard to customer affordability, their small and local minority business programs, rate increase history, their customer assistance programs. That's all included in that section. So just as a note, but you're not seeing what you see with county government departments. In terms of the spending control limits mentioned earlier, those are summarized on page 6 of the packet. And you heard the main highlight, which was the maximum average rate increase, where we have the 10.2% that this council recommended back in early November. The Prince George's Council was at 9, and the proposal's at 9.8. The executive, by the way, we haven't talked about the executive recommendations yet at this point. The executive had recommended approval of the WSSC water budget as proposed, and that includes the rate increases assumed for volumetric rates and the fixed fees, and also the expenditures assumed in the budget. The long-range financial plan is also included in the packet. We had a lot of discussion about this in the spending control limits process. In past years, what's tended to happen is the base case that the councils review in the fall tends to get trimmed back by the councils, and then what's approved in the spring tends to be closer to that lower level, and then a new long-range financial plan has to be established for the upcoming year. And so from WSSC Water's perspective, it becomes a bit of a changing process every year. Their intent, of course, would be to try to focus on what the 9.8% would provide and try to work with that in a multi-year basis. The challenge, of course, is that the councils are approving the budget on an annual basis, and we can't commit to future rate increases. So that's sort of one challenge with this process. But at least the long-range financial plan does provide a snapshot of where things stand now based on the best information that WSSC Water has. The long-range financial plan that's included in the budget does presume the proposed CIP and the impacts of that in terms of debt service and all the implications for operating budget impacts associated with that. It also does assume increases in more what we would call normal increases in regional sewage disposal costs and inflationary type increases in all of these other cost areas. And it also is looking at the financial metrics that were referenced earlier and trying to make sure that those metrics are achieved or improved at least over the 6-year period. And as you did hear earlier, just one positive note, WSSC Water does have the highest bond rating available from the 3 rating agencies. So a few years ago, they were on a notice from, I think it was Moody's, Fitch, with regard to a negative outlook. That negative outlook was removed. And so they're on firmer ground now going forward without that negative outlook. Real quickly on the revenue side, page 9 of the packet, what I present here is the revenues as they would look without any rate increase or increase in fixed fees. And fortunately, there has been some positive activity in the base budget or base revenues, if you will. So they are seeing some increase in revenues just from rate activity, if you will, where people fall within the tiers for usage and some of the other fees that they collect. Overall, that's about a $25 million increase that it's equivalent, it's about a 2.5% increase overall, and that helps marginally reduce the rate impact needed going forward when we look at expenditures. And those, real quick on page 10 of the packet, and you heard this earlier, despite some of that positive revenue, we are still seeing per capita water usage declining over time. I have a chart on page 10 that highlights that going back about 20 years. And basically through both passive water consumption or water savings through improved water devices, as well as conscious energy conservation, we are seeing per capita production by WSSC down significantly from 20 years ago. That's positive from an environmental standpoint, of course, but it does create some challenges financially, given that that's by far volumetric revenue is by far their largest revenue source. So going forward, that means that they're generally not going to benefit much. For instance, the equivalent would be on the county side. If our assessable base increases in the county, then you collect more revenue per the tax rate. The equivalent on their side is that they're having a declining assessable base in a way, so that creates challenges in terms of where do they offset that. About 8 years ago, we did have a significant change in the fixed fees. We created the infrastructure investment fee and also recalibrated the account maintenance fee, because the fixed fees do create a little bit more stability. The rate structure itself was revised from its old structure where you paid at the highest tier to now where residents and non-residential pay through the tiers. So that also had an impact on revenues going forward. With that, I'll turn it to page 11 of the packet, where the expenditures are summarized. And I noted earlier that we had some positive revenue activity. So you can see overall the expenditures are increasing about 11.8%, but the rate increase requirement under this is 9.8%. That's the budget is balanced at the 9.8%, and that's because of that slight increase in revenue that we see. As I mentioned, the big numbers in this budget, PAYGO, by far the biggest, $42.4 million, really driven by the financial metrics and trying to make sure the debt service financial metrics in particular stay within the ranges that the rating agencies want to see. So this increase in 26 is followed by other increases beyond that in the long-range financial plan. So that's a major foundation of this budget going forward. The other big area noted was in salary and wages. We had a significant number of position increases the last couple of years, so some of this is really absorbing the annualizations of those positions being inserted into the budget. You also have compensation increases, just like the two counties do in terms of COLAs and merit pay. That's built into this. And then you have the new positions, the 77 new positions that were referenced. And a portion of those are cost-neutral contract positions converting to in-house. And you also have, as you heard, positions needed to increase our regulatory compliance effort, and then additional positions for enhanced operations. So those two areas, the PAYGO and the salary and wage areas, are the largest increases we're seeing in this budget for FY26. And given that, my guess is that's likely, if adjustments are needed to this budget to get to a lower rate increase or to cover some of those regional sewage disposal costs, those areas will probably be looked at first to see that impact going forward. The other major area of costs in here is what we call the all other costs. PAYGO is normally in there, but I broke that out because it's such a big number. But the chart on page 15 breaks out the major categories there, and you have a lot of ups and downs in those areas. You did hear specifically about the significant increase in healthcare costs in the employee benefits section, so that's a big increase here. You also have some increases in their vehicle fleet turnover, and in some in contract areas and chemicals, things like that. But these are, I would say, are more routine increases from year to year, and there may be some adjustments possible here in deferrals, once again, if they need to get to a lower percentage increase. The debt service is increasing, although not perhaps as large as it has in past years. Partly that's because of the increases we've had in PAYGO over time. They've also recalibrated their CIP a bit, so the CIP going forward is a little bit lower than it was previously. So the debt service impact, which moves slowly over time given the long debt service intervals, is a relatively marginal increase this year. I mentioned earlier the regional sewage disposal costs. Those are broken out on page 16 of the packet. And some of the areas where DC Water has identified increases that are within the areas of cost that are shared by the wholesale customers, including WSSC Water. So we can talk more about that if you're interested. The other areas are relatively small. Heat, light, and power. It's a significant increase in heat, light, and power, and we are seeing pressure on kilowatt-hour rates going forward. We have heard a lot of discussion about how those rates are going to be going up significantly for customers. Well, they'll be going up for WSSC Water as well as part of that. I think with that, I will. I'm sorry, I forgot one significant area that the committee will need to discuss today. In addition to the volumetric and fixed fee rate increase that the committee and the council will need to settle on, we also have FY26 system development charges. For the first time in decades, WSSC Water is recommending an increase in that charge, a 2.5% increase, which basically represents a CPI equivalent increase. Their long-range financial plan does assume that CPI increases would continue in future years going forward across the next 6 years. However, the councils approve the SDC annually. So as with rates, what the council would be deciding this year is FY26, and then can revisit that issue next year, whether it wants to continue those increases. Those increases are needed because of projected gaps between revenues and expenditures in the SDC fund. It is a separate, distinct fund intended to have growth, pay for growth going forward. And WSSC Water has had some significant projects funded with SDC over time. Those projects are actually declining a bit in the 6-year period, but the revenues do need to catch up. So WSSC Water is recommending that. That would help ensure that the fund stays positive across the 6-year period. And once again, we can look at that again next year as well. With that, I'll turn it back to the committee if there's
Great.
Other areas you want to dig deeper into.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levchenko, for that thorough review, and thank you, WSSC, for the good presentation. Ultimately, again, this is all about safe and clean drinking water and making sure that our residents have access to it and are healthy. And it has been a challenging year regarding WSSC and the budgets, given the differences between Montgomery County and Prince George's County, but you appear to have landed in the middle, and I want to express my appreciation for coming in under our ceiling, which is a good thing. I supported a lower ceiling, and you've come under what the council and the executive approved, so that is a good step. And also, Mr. Levchenko, I just want to highlight something that you wrote in the staff packet on page 8, which bears repeating, that quote, as noted in past years, over the past 20 years, water and sewer utilities nationwide have experienced higher increases than other sectors, likely the result of aging infrastructure as well as enhanced environmental requirements over time and flat water consumption trends. So environmental sustainability, newer buildings and codes and pipes and the cost of just doing business. That is the confluence of this decision. And so I feel comfortable approving all of the recommendations, the 3 recommendations, the fixed fee increase, the development charge, and then the overall proposed budget. Colleagues? Yeah. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I agree. I just had one question I wanted to go back to on page 15, table 6, on under the truck and automobile, because that's a $6 million increase, and I know it's about regarding overdue vehicles and purchases, and sometimes those things get pushed out. But one of the questions I have is, given the volatility we are facing right now with tariffs on, tariffs off, what that may do to the purchasing of vehicles and everything. Has there been any reconsideration of that category, and is there any room for possibly pushing off some of those purchases into the future, given just the volatility in the marketplace right now?
So, Councilmember Stewart, for the current year, what lesson learned from last year? We now have a lot of off-the-lot purchases, because when we tried to deal with the manufacturers directly, there were delays, so we didn't get the allocation we needed in that fiscal year. So for the period 25, and I believe going into partial 26, that has been addressed. It's the period from mid-26 out that the team is looking at and trying to see what the impacts of the tariffs will be once they actually settle. Because right now we're just running analysis and things are changing on a daily, weekly basis. So depending on where we finally land, that assessment will be made, saying that is the cost differential worth us replacing it, or can we live with the fleet that we have and then push it out once things stabilize? So that's an ongoing analysis that's actively being looked at.
Great, thank you. Dr. Powell, General Manager Powell, did you want to say something?
I'll just add that part of the assessment is operational impacts. In order for our crews to get to emergencies, we've got to have the heavy equipment purchases. So we've made smaller vehicle purchases to get inspection staff, meter readers, et cetera, around. We have a 5-year plan. So we can make adjustments to that, but we just had a recent all-hands meeting actually at our Gaithersburg depot, and they expressed concerns about, the sharing of heavy equipment and, gaps in coverage to make sure that all of the crews are covered, especially since we have a 24/7 operation. So that will be one of the categories, as the CFO said, we will assess, and we're looking at the impacts. There was a conversation going on earlier about just what we see as the impacts of increased tariffs and what that will do. So that may delay some purchases, but we will be very clear about the specific needs and things that we cannot delay going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm supportive of what has been put forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Balcom.
Yes, thank you. I am supportive as well. I think that when we met in the fall, WSSC did a great presentation in terms of the significant need. And I appreciate the chairs bringing up the point about costs are going up for all kinds of reasons, but aging infrastructure is one of those things that we just can't ignore. Similarly, advanced technology. One of the things I would love to see is the monthly billing. So I think it's important to just bring this up in terms of we're having a much bigger discussion about fees and taxing and the impact that it has on our community, but that this is a necessary increase if we want to continue having safe, clean water. I do have one question, and it's just about the interplay between PAYGO, debt service, bond capacity, and so do you have a long-range goal as to what you would like that debt service to be? It's currently around 33%. Is there a specific goal in mind of where you want that to get to?
Yes, Councilmember Balcom. Based on the 2012 analysis, we had incremental increases, but because of the delay, the increases that we're putting in now are increasing exponentially. The target was, I believe, we have our financial advisor reviewing our plan as well. They're recommending 20 to 25% of the CIP come from PAYGO. It's still under analysis because we want to make sure that it's sustainable. What we don't want to do is come back and then have a rate shock or a revenue shock. We want to make sure that whatever we're recommending, we slow the growth. We're well under our limit for our debt capacity, but what we don't want to do is create a burden today that we're paying off over time, and then that impacts what we can do with the other operations. So it's something that's still under analysis. We'll be able to come back. I think the report is due in about 60 days, so we'll be able to provide input once we've had a full analysis and settled on the new target, and make sure that that target is embedded into the long-term plan going forward.
Okay. Yeah, I'd appreciate seeing that perhaps in the fall when we start the discussion again. You're the first one, you're the first agency that we look at in the future budget. But I think that it's really an important discussion about when we see these large pay-go numbers and the impact that it has on future debt service. So I would appreciate that. So,
yeah, I will note, historically, when the spending control limits process was first established, the goal was to try to keep debt service below 40% of their overall budget. And they're well below that now, partly because the financial metrics have changed over time, and that debt service, that 40% would not meet any of the metrics. Similar with fund balance. Fund balance used to be much lower, and that worked from a fund balance policy, but it did not work from the policies of these financial metrics. So the fund balance has gone up over time, and the pay-go requirement has gone up over time, really because of those debt service ratios that were mentioned earlier. Even though years ago we would be well within the metrics that we had initially put together for the spending control limits process.
Great. Thank you to my colleagues for their good questions. Yes, we will revisit this conversation soon enough in the fall, as we always do, but sounds like we are all in support of this, so without objection, we'll support the WSSC budget. Yeah, Director Powell.
I didn't mean to interrupt you with my look, but
we already approved it, so you can continue now if you want.
Well, thank goodness. I said the CFO has on his lucky socks today. But I just wanted to thank you, Chair Glass, President Stewart, Councilmember Balcom, for your deliberations through this process, and to just say that this has been a long process, and your constituents may not see all of the questions that you ask in the background, and the discussions that happen offline, the suggestions, the requests, those things help to provide guidance, and it is not just a blanket. To get to this point took a lot of work and a lot of consideration by this body. And I just wanted to thank you for that and acknowledge, and also to thank Mr. Levchenko for his analysis. This has been going on since August to get to this point for next year's budget. So just thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Powell. And also, I see Commissioner Bayonet back there, so thank you. Thank you to our commissioners and to all of your staff as well.
Thanks.
So that item is approved. The next item on our agenda today is taking up the utilities non-departmental account. And we will bring up Director Dice and the DGS team and Mr. Mia. Okay. Mr. Mia, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. The first item before you is the utilities NDA account budget. This is the budget that pays for the county's utilities costs, essentially, as well as some other costs, which we'll go into. For FY26, the executive is recommending a funding level of $42.3 million, which is an increase of $5.2 million, or 14% of the FY25 level. The increases are driven by three components. One is a $2.4 million increase for lease payments to establish and maintain the county's resiliency hubs and microgrid facilities. Another $2.2 million is related to increases for utility costs for purchase of electricity, natural gas, water and sewage. And then another $540,000 is related to increased solid waste charges, which are being driven by rate increases by DEP, as well as based on the square footage of county facilities. As we open more facilities, we pay higher charges as well. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions before we dive deeper.
Thank you. Director Dice, to you and your team, thank you for all the work regarding energy resilience here within county facilities. The monies that we use are here in the packet. Can you talk to us about the monies that we have saved because of our grid system?
Well, thank you very much. David Dice, Director, Department of General Services. I love to talk about this, that although consumption has gone up because we've added new facilities, although commodity costs in the private sector from the utilities have gone up, we have fixed fees because of our microgrid projects. We can fix that commodity rate. So while our volume of square footage conditioned and powered goes up, the number of facilities goes up, our consumption rate has gone down. And it's because of these excellent measures that the team of the folks that are sitting at this table and a number of folks out there scratching their heads thinking, how can we be more creative? This county boasts the first of its kind solar-powered bus maintenance depot. Another one is under construction right now. In next month, we're going to open the only second net zero public safety facility in the country, and that is the 6th District Police Station. We're in the process of working to convert other facilities to net zero, and for the public's benefit, it means that the site generates all the power it consumes. We've established resiliency hubs. The first resiliency hub in an equity-based consideration is the Scotland Neighborhood Recreation Center. It's become the prototype for what we're going to be doing at all the other similar centers, so that those neighborhoods can enjoy resiliency in times of power outages. So that's on a building side. On the fleet side, the depot that's under development right now for microgrid will also include hydrogen generation, as we are aggressively pursuing the conversion of our transit fleet from diesel and natural gas to electric, whether it's battery electric or hydrogen electric. Right now we have approximately 38 electric buses in the inventory. By the end of this year, we'll have over 80. By the end of next year, we'll have about 150. So we continue to aggressively expand the conversion of the fleet, meeting the climate goals that are set before us. Honestly, if you'd have asked me 5 years ago, are we going to get there, I'd have scratched my head. But you've got a tremendous group of folks working in general services, in DOT, and elsewhere to commit themselves to achieving these goals. So I can't praise them enough.
Great. Thank you for that. Alex?
Yeah, no, I would just say thank you, and I think we don't talk about this holistically enough, and I will say, and I know this happened to Councilmember Balcom with her daughter, but my daughter, who goes to school at Boston University, was actually in a class where they highlighted a lot of this work that we're doing here, and so sometimes I think when we're so close to it here in Montgomery County, and we do have high expectations for this work, when we step back or hear from folks outside of the county, and that we're being used as the model is really important to lift up. So I just want to say thank you for that work.
You're welcome, and it's because we're committed to it, but it's fun. We enjoyed it, and we don't brag well. We're too busy doing this stuff to sit back on our laurels, but these facilities and initiatives have received international attention and recognition. So the residents of Montgomery County have every reason to be proud of their government.
You may not brag well, but as a mom, we do brag well, and so I appreciate it. My daughter was at a conference. She lives in London, but she was at a conference, and Montgomery County popped up on the screen, and it was a fun moment for her.
Fantastic. Let's keep going.
So going a little bit more into each of the cost increases. The first item is on page 2 of your packet, item 1.1. This again is the microgrid payments and resiliency hubs. This is essentially a 30-year lease that began in FY22. As we deploy more projects and more facilities, the lease payments do increase. So the costs of the lease program are increasing based on us increasing the scope of the project. The second item, 1.2, is the utility commodity cost escalation of $2.2 million. There's a lot of data in the background of the packet that I won't get into, but essentially since FY 2021, our electricity usage has remained steady for the most part. And electricity accounts for almost 63% of the utilities NDA budget, so it's the bulk of the budget. At the same time, unit costs have gone up significantly since FY 21. We have inflationary factors pushing the unit cost of kilowatt hours up. Essentially, although we're not using much more electricity, even though we're opening new buildings, we are paying much more for the electricity we are using. And so that's essentially driving the cost increase in the utilities NDA. And then the third item is the solid waste charges. Again, because of the fee increases being proposed by DEP for next year, DGS anticipates higher solid waste charges for their facilities. And this is based on a straightforward calculation of square footage times a unit price. So that cost increase is significant, 60% over the current budget year. Finally, I do have some potential reductions for the committee's consideration. As we recall, last year the council did approve $10 million to utilities NDA to cure a structural deficit. And so any reductions today should keep that in mind, that we have kind of trued up the budget for the NDA. Nonetheless, there are some options ranging from 1% decrease to a 10% decrease in the event that the committee would want to consider. And that would save anywhere from $269,000 in the FY 26 budget to $2.7 million. And again, it's just open for consideration. But there is a risk, of course, if the savings don't materialize, the bills will still be paid, and we may end a risk of ending the budget with a deficit. But that's for discussion.
You preempted my question, so thank you. Director Dice.
Yeah, I wanted to actually congratulate the committee on its work from last year, because in that correction, based upon final fiscal quarter projections, we're going to come in about $150,000, within $150,000 of the estimate and the budget for last year, which is why I would encourage you to not mess with it this year. You guys did a great job truing it up. We've talked about the stuff that's going on in the past. Righting that ship has done well, and I think we'd be wise to stay the course.
I appreciate that. Over the last 2 years that the three of us have served in this committee, we've been trying to right the ship and make sure that there's truth in budgeting, and we don't play games, and I think we'll stay the course, I presume. Absolutely. Yeah, we will stay the course. Emphatically stay the course. But Director Dice, thank you. And so you said within $150,000 of the whole budget.
It's 100. Don Shorman, the Office of Energy and Sustainability. It's about 171 is our current projection following the third quarter. So we're a little bit over, but we're within 0.5%.
Very good. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Gary Nalvin, Office of Management and Budget. I just also wanted to express our thanks to this committee for helping us to right-size the utilities budget last year. As we stated, we are coming in very close. I do want to caveat that with that this is DGS's projections, not been vetted by OMB yet, but you will be receiving the quarterly analysis in a couple of weeks. Okay. And we do believe they're pretty close to the target.
We're all on the same team here. That's it. Appreciate that, though. Good. So without it, yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Balcom.
Just one. We're going to talk about the solid waste charge at the end of at the number 8, somewhere along this journey. So if that changes, I would assume that this cost would change as well. Thank you.
There you go. Foreshadowing. So without objection, we will support the utilities non-departmental account NDA. Thank you. Now on to item number 3. This is the FY26 operating budget for fleet management systems. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Mia.
Okay. Item number 3. So the fleet. This is the fleet. There's 2 items before you for this item. One is the fleet's operating budget, as well as one new CIP project that was amended, rather an existing CIP project that was amended in March for this year. For the fleet's operating budget, the executive is recommending a funding level of $116 million, which is essentially an increase of $13.7 million, or 13.4% from the FY25 approved operating budget. As a reminder, the fleet's budget is an internal service fund. It collects revenues in the form of chargebacks to other funds and departments, including both tax-supported and non-tax supported. Historically, tax-supported chargebacks have been around 90 to 95%. For analysis, we've assume 90%, and then the remainder of the chargebacks goes towards non-tax supported funds. So any reductions or additions would be along those ratios, roughly. In terms of enhancements and staffing changes, the recommended budget includes adding 4 new positions to support the apprenticeship program with a FY26 cost of $285,000. There's also an enhancement of one-time funds of $120,000 for IT support services. And finally, there's an enhancement of $9.7 million for future fleet replacements. I will note that the $9.7 million is being paid through the fund balance in this internal service fund. It is not new chargebacks that are being passed forward in the 26 budget. So whether or not any changes there would not affect the tax-supported, non-tax-supported split. And this replacements have been ongoing for several years. There's essentially a backlog of over 1,000 vehicles that need to be replaced. They've approached the end of their useful life, and so those replacements are part of the long-term strategy for this fund. Beyond that, there are a number of increases for to maintain same service levels. These include contractually contract increases being driven by essentially maintaining the same service levels. They include $2.4 million for the transit bus service lane contract, $650,000 for the light duty fleet maintenance contract. As you may recall, last year we did enter into a new contract with a new contractor to maintain the light duty fleet. And this increase is essentially, I believe, right-sizing the scope of work. There's $241,000 for fuel tank console upgrades, $65,000 for electric bus telematics, $62,000 for IT system server upgrades, $50,000 for oil, a $382 3% inflationary adjustment for non-profit contractor providers. There is a reduction of $1 million in the fuel budget, and we'll talk a little bit more about that down the line, as well as $1 million reduction for one-time items that were funded this year but no longer needed for 26. These include shoplift replacements and purchasing one-time purchase of vehicles. And finally, the other adjustments were related to compensation and other required operating expenses. I'll stop there.
Thank you. DGS, can you talk to us about the apprentice program?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. We have, as the committee will recall in prior discussions, routinely run into a difficulty of keeping and maintaining a mechanic workforce. And at the same time, challenges in a diversification of the workforce. It's very male-dominated, and we've actually tried to introduce the career field to female candidates and others. And so we found that the best way to generate a steady inflow of positions is through an apprenticeship program. It provides a career path for those that are not choosing college. In fact, it can also provide a career path through those who did choose college and now want to actually get work in this area. So the apprenticeship program has proven a smashing success. Mr. Mia captured some of the statistics on page 5 of your packet, that since its inception, we've had 19 mechanic technicians come in, 16 have been retained. That is exactly the intent of the program. Bring people in, train them up. Mr. Calvin Jones, our fleet manager, is here with us. His staff has done a superb job of creating a curriculum, building custom training tools and equipment so that we bring these folks in. They're an apprentice for a year. They get into the job stream and have careers. Our mechanics are given promotions and advancement based upon their technical training and certification. This does all of that. They can come in as an apprentice and essentially graduate as a journeyman. The program in the fleet has been so successful, we're replicating it in our facilities because, like fleet mechanics, finding electrical, HVAC mechanics, electricians, and plumbers is very, very difficult. Over 60% of the master electricians working today are past retirement age. That's a real problem. Plus, we need to see schools investing in these sorts of honorable trades. So creating a stream, we're working with Montgomery County Schools and Montgomery College to do this, and creating a stream where we can have an influx of young folks coming in and staying with us for years. So the apprenticeship program, as a result of us building it, we've had to utilize existing resources. Currently, some of the positions dedicated for apprentices are actually full-time mechanic positions. And while I've just sat here over the last few minutes and heralded the benefits of the apprenticeship program, there's no substitute for experienced mechanics. And typically, when someone is in the apprenticeship program or recently graduated from it, they're pairing up with another mechanic who's supervising their work and bringing them along. That still creates a deficiency in our ability to meet federally mandated preventive maintenance routines and other necessary actions. So still having those full-time mechanics is essential. This budget proposal helps us put back into and fill those full-time mechanics and yet still advance the apprenticeship program at the same time.
Thank you for that description and highlighting that 19 had been hired through the program and 16 are full-time county employees now. That is a great rate of return, quite frankly. And Mr. Jones, just a quick question for you. Can you elaborate on who these 19 people are? Are they Montgomery County residents? Have they gone through, the Edison School, or just fill it out a little bit more?
Certainly. Calvin Jones, Division Chief Fleet Management Services. Most of the candidates did come from Thomas Edison High School. We do public outreach with them twice a year to meet with them, to look to discuss to sell our program, basically, and we look to leverage them most of the time to bring in our candidates. One of the challenges that we run into from a zero emission standpoint is that there's no place to hire, like, say, a zero emissions technician, right? So in order to align with the council's goal and the county's goals from an environmental standpoint, it's really necessary for us to build and develop those folks in-house. So that's part of the reason, as David alluded to, with the development of curriculum and things of that nature, it becomes essential. So we went out, as I say, we go out into the community, we try to get folks in, we have open houses to recruit folks, and we highlight the apprenticeship program in order to do that.
I love it, and I love the fact that we're seeing the investment in MCPS and in Edison continuing to grow, and that is the holistic approach that we'd like to see. So congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have any other questions?
No, I just think it's terrific, and I'm looking forward. Yes. Okay.
Greg Boykin, Deputy Director, DGS. One thing I'd like to also highlight, we now have a full-time person who is looking at the development of our apprenticeship program, specifically in getting it certified. Because once you're certified with the state of Maryland, you can apply for grants, and that helps with training and obviously helps offset our operating budget. So I just want to point that out. We are aggressively seeking that certification on both the fleet and facility side.
Taking it to the next level. That's great.
Yep.
So when that happens, that's a bragging moment, okay?
Yeah.
Because we are really trying, we go out and ask our employers to take on our students and to do this exact thing. And apprenticeship programs are so important. So when that happens, we need to shout it from the rooftop and ask some of our other employers to do the same.
I want to shift to another item, and it's the IT support services. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that $120,000 request?
Certainly. This is a one-time to procure services for the implementing the Asset Works. You'll recall our discussions here and certainly at GEO Committee regarding the implementation of a system that will finally enable us to identify and track our infrastructure, building systems, components, parts, and so Asset Works is the name of the system. We've installed that, and it's been in functional use at facilities and starting to provide us, frankly, what is somewhat alarming statistics. We knew that we'd get this, and there'll be more to come on that. This was also then translating the same system over into fleet management. The system that we've had there is old and and showing its age. And it'll be very effective to have all of the county's capital assets under the roof of one operating system. And frankly, their fleet management system is quite good and enables us to do a lot of things. So this is a one-time charge to implement that.
So you're saying one-time charge, but it sounds like it's an ongoing need.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So then how do you square those two?
Well, we have, Asset Works is supported by a team now, and Mr. Jones has got staff being trained in Asset Works at the same time. But this is the loading, the training, and all of those things to bring current staff up to speed.
What would the ongoing expenses be in the next fiscal year and beyond?
So beyond, the only ongoing expenses would be for the system itself, but that would probably be in the DGS budget, already included in the DGS budget, I believe, in the central budget.
Just software maintenance costs.
Yeah, that's it. Because the biggest issue right now for the $120,000 is the development and training of staff and the changing over the system. So right now we currently have a fleet management system, but it's no longer supported. It's a legacy system, no longer supported, and so the big thing will be the changeover, right? So some of the business practices will change a little bit, training and developing staff to be able to work on a new system and things of that nature. So that's basically what the increase is for.
Yeah, so to summarize, we already have staff managing IT activities, and we already have built into our current budget software maintenance costs. It'll just be with a different system. So we're not anticipating a net change in ongoing software maintenance costs and subscription fees because it'll just be replacing one system with another system. So that's why that's not captured here.
This is an item that we had intended to revisit in future years. We felt that for this year, it was very important to provide the funding to set up the system correctly, to set up DGS for success with the system, and then we'll be reevaluating the needs as we go forward into future years. But this is a one-time cost for FY26 right now.
So it's one-time cost to set up the system and train, and then the ongoing expenses would be in the DGS budget, which would be a government operations committee within their portfolio. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is this something that you all have taken up already?
No, it wasn't. No, it was not in their budget request this year.
It's not high. It's just part of our administrative activities.
Okay. Okay. Without objection. Okay. And then fuel costs. Did you want to talk about that, Mr. Mia?
Sure. So the packet, starting on page 6, has some historical data on fuel costs. As the committee is aware, these fuel costs are highly volatile. The price of oil changes rapidly based on current events and news. For FY26, however, the DGS and the executive are recommending $1 million reduction in the fuel budget, going down from 14.6 in the base 25 budget to 13.6. This again is reflective of their beliefs that the price of oil will remain low for the upcoming year. And so that reduction is included in the recommended budget. I have included some additional options for the committee to consider, essentially looking at further reductions of 1 to 10%. As a rule of thumb, as I mentioned before, a 1% reduction, for example, would save $122,000, of which 90% of that would accrue to general fund or to tax-supported funds. Most of those tax-supported funds are either the general fund or the mass transit fund. So the exact calculations differ based on each individual budget in the recommended budget. OMB and DGS will have to rerun those calculations, but that's roughly the savings we could realize in tax-supported funds. So again, it's all in the table 5 below on page 6 that shows the different options and impacts.
I appreciate the staff recommendations, but I think we talked about the utility of the utilities budget being as it is, and I feel more comfortable going with the budget recommendations as are.
Perfect.
And I hear my colleagues agreeing, so we'll stick to the proposed budget there. But
excellent.
Thank you for staff recommendations.
Okay. One final item is the CIP amendment. The county executive is amended the County Fleet Electrical Vehicle Charging Station CIP project. It originally had $750,000 in FY25, the funding of which was from current revenue. For FY26, the amendment includes $3.9 million in FY26, and that funding would come from the motor pool fund, from the fund balance as well. So it's not new appropriations, it's really just the fund balance being appropriated for this purpose. The exact list of projects in 25 and 26 are included on page 7. You'll see the county facilities where the charging stations would be installed. Historically, in the past, the charging stations that the county has installed has come from the DGS operating budget or the fleet operating budget, and so for next year, it'll be funded through the CIP.
Okay. Without objection, we'll support that as well.
And beyond that, just a little update on the fund balance for the motor pool fund. Even with the increased use of fleet replacements in 26 and the CIP project, the fund is projecting an year-end fund balance of $25.8 million. That's a significant number, but it is being planned for future fleet replacements as well. So there's a plan to use up that fund balance as we go forward.
Going back to the question that Councilmember Stewart asked earlier, just about the ongoing trade wars and procurement of vehicles, how is that going into your thinking?
Yeah, right now it's so early in the process. It's very difficult to ascertain what the actual impacts will be. For some of the manufacturers, they have inventory that's already in the pipeline. It's not affected by the threat of tariffs currently, and in some cases, they're even offering discounts. So we plan to continue to monitor the situation on a continuous basis. One thing I do want to note is that on a light duty side, on the administrative side, we've leveraged purchasing used vehicles where available for electrification because of the increased depreciation of electric vehicles in the resale market actually benefits us in a way that it wouldn't normally benefit a normal consumer or someone who may own it as a first vehicle, or as a first owner. So we plan on leveraging those things in order to try to manage the impacts of the prospective tariffs. So.
If I can add anecdotally to what Mr. Jones just said, since our administrative fleet does not get the wear and tear quite to the same degree that the public safety fleet does, we can safely purchase good quality late model used vehicles. And I was coming to work about a year ago and heard on the news that the chief executive of a large car rental company was dismissed because he had overinvested the fleet changeover to electric vehicles and no one was renting them. And so they had dismissed him and now had thousands of electric vehicles on their hands, what to do with. So I came into the office, called Mr. Jones and said, let's get them. So we got some 30 or so, 35 electric cars at about 60% of what would be the otherwise market cost. So these are the types of creative actions we're taking, not only to maximize the spend of the public funds, but also to meet our climate goals, which are still very aggressive, and we've got a large fleet to switch over.
And I will ask, what was the national dealer that you bought them from?
I think it was Enterprise? Hertz. Yeah, Hertz. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So just to add to what Calvin told you, if you are expecting inflation in the future, it makes sense to buy what you can now. I want to notify you, OMB is working with DGS to potentially accelerate some of those replacements and spend down some of that fund balance we have to take advantage of any offers we have from dealers or other opportunities.
Thank you. Councilor Malcolm.
Yes, thank you. I think that's certainly a great idea. So for FY25, there were 277 vehicles, I guess, roughly budgeted. Have you been able to purchase all of those for 2025, or are you still in the process?
So for 2025, we're still in the process of purchasing vehicles. Some of the vehicle manufacturers. So basically, it's usually governed by order dates when we can order vehicles, and so we're still in the process of buying some of them. As Gary alluded to, or as Mr. Nelvin alluded to, that we're in the process of increasing the number of vehicles that we'll end up purchasing in FY25. Okay. Just because we have some availability and there's some discounts associated with it. So,
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
WSSC alluded to off-the-lot purchases. We have done some of that too. but as Mr. Jones just pointed out, when you're buying large number of vehicles on a fleet basis, the manufacturers have order windows, and so we have to coordinate that. You can't, public may not realize this, you just can't pick up the phone and call a Chevy dealer and say, I need 100 cars. So we try and get our orders in. The advancement of these funds will enable us to go in and get a prominent place in line. One of the big challenges in the recent years has been the supply chain. We had the funds to purchase trucks and cars, but the inventory just wasn't there. So this will help us to get ahead of the game.
I do have one last question. We have a number of other items we have to get to in the agenda, but with regard to the DHHS mobile crisis vans, that program already is strained because there are not enough social workers to support the DHHS crisis outreach team. So what will the procurement of how will the procurement of those vehicles, which are very much needed, actually be utilized if there is already a strained program?
We would have to check with DHHS on this, and we can get back to you. But I do believe they have employees who are in need of vehicles, and those positions were funded previously, but the vehicles were not.
Right. Well, and just to accentuate that point, the mobile crisis outreach team has been fully funded. It has been hard to hire social workers to realize the goal, right? And we hear about it all the time with regard to first responders and emergency needs. And so just wanting to make sure that if we do this investment, which is needed, that we're actually able to utilize them as intended. Yeah.
So I have some firsthand experience because I did a ride along with our crisis team, and I heard from some of the folks who are working right now that some of the vehicles that they do work with, they do need to be upgraded because they can't, when they get into the car, they don't have the maps capability, and that's difficult for them because it's a crisis team that's going out. They're going to different locations quickly, and the night I was out with them, they had to just use their phone because there wasn't in the car. They had, the map thing, which makes it a little bit more difficult. And so agree that we need to continue looking at this, but from firsthand experience of the vehicles we do have out there, they're old. They're pretty old, and given that a number of our crisis teams are going out late at night, sometimes in not great weather and everything, to be able to make sure that they have safe vehicles that, and I know you make sure they're safe, but also, provide the capability for the navigational system, I think is important.
Great. So it sounds like, thank you for that. And thank you for going out and seeing firsthand. So it sounds like they're replacement vehicles, not adding to the size of the fleet.
No,
These are new.
these are new vehicles.
Semantical difference, I think, right? New
Well,
vehicles
these
replace older vehicles.
These are adding to the fleet. We do have a vehicle retirement program going on as we get among the vehicles that are listed here, and this increase in funding will include more vehicles for our prioritization is public safety and health. If you just drive around, you're at the bottom of the list. So police and public health get the prioritization, as they will under this.
So the HHS vehicles have been approved, and so we're in the process of purchasing new vehicles. They were originally operating out of a pool, out of their pool vehicles. So to your point, the newer vehicles will be updated. Will have updated systems, so they'll be able to effectively do their jobs. So, thank you.
So this is in addition to those that have already been funded.
Yeah. So this gets to the next slide, motor pool NDA. Okay. Motor pool NDA uses general fund dollars, usually one-time dollars, to buy new expanded. They're expanding the fleet, not replacing it one-to-one, but adding new vehicles to the fleet. And these are one-time costs because in the following year, the fleet budget will budget for replacements as going forward. So for FY26, there's 5 vehicles, new vehicles that are being added to the HHS fleet, essentially for the mobile crisis teams. Right now, of course, they're using existing vehicles, which availability and quality differs by case by case. So 190,000 of the 1.39 million will be used to buy those 5 new vehicles for DHHS. The remaining 1.2 billion in that budget is the third tranche of 20 vehicles for sheriffs. Collective bargaining several years ago had called for buying 60 vehicles, 20 each per year for 3 years. And so that 1.2 million in FY26, the remaining 1.2 million is for sheriff. And the equipment to outfit those vehicles is being budgeted in sheriff's operating budget. So that's the motor pool NDA. It's great. Adding fleets, new vehicles to expand the fleet as we add more positions, more functions, more programs.
Understood.
If I could just clarify this
Yes.
DHHS request for the record, these are 5 positions that were added in previous budgets where the positions were funded, but those positions were positions that required a vehicle for each individual, and those vehicles were not funded in a prior budget. So now we're adding the funding for the vehicles. And I believe HHS has been using loaner vehicles from Fleet in the meantime.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of the clarifying, right? Lots of different moving parts, literally. Without objection, we'll support that?
Yep.
Great. Thank you, DGS. So now we're moving from the transportation over to the environment side of our portfolio and starting a conversation and review that was supposed to be had about a week and a half ago that we had to unfortunately delay due to facilities issues. But I invite the DEP team to come on up. This next item is a series of items that we're grouping together on the agenda, items 5 through 7, which are the FY26 operating budget amendments to the FY25 to 30 CIP program, with a number of amendments that I will have Mr. Levchenko walk us through.
Yeah, the first portion of this discussion, and there's one packet for items 5, 6, and 7, just to be clear. The first discussion is focusing on the DEP budget funded with general fund and the water quality protection fund. So those two areas. The recycling resource management is a separate packet that we'll get to later. And then also the climate change planning NDA, which is also general fund supported, is also included in this packet before you here. So those 3 items combined are in this one packet. Regarding the DEP budget overall for those items, those 2 items, page 3 of the memo summarizes the expenditure trends for the general fund and the water quality protection fund on table 1. The general fund portion, which is significantly smaller than the water quality protection fund, is seeing a very modest increase this year. Basically a lot of technical adjustments. There are no recommended service enhancements. You may recall in the 25 proposed or recommended budget last year, there were some enhancements that eventually were put on the council's reconciliation list and were not ultimately approved. So DEP's budget was basically a same services budget last year with technical adjustments. And that's pretty much what has been recommended by the executive this year for the general fund portion of the budget. So what you're seeing, and you'd have to go to the executive's recommended budget section for the general fund. What you're seeing are, for instance, FY26 compensation adjustments. So to the degree the council approves the recommended compensation adjustment or something different, that would affect all departments, including the DEP general fund. You have annualizations of personnel costs from prior years. You have some lapse adjustments. Pretty much almost every year, OMB does an analysis of lapse for departments and makes adjustments, those that spread out to the departments. You also have central service charges like risk management and motor pool and printing and mail and things like that. So those kinds of changes each year are more technical and just are continuing what the department does in the current year into the next year. You also do have some staff funding reassignments because DEP does have multiple funds as they do some relatively minor reorganizations or hire new staff that may be doing different assignments. Those staff may be charged differently in the upcoming year between the various funds, and so that is also accounted for in in these budgets. But really, for the DEP general fund budget, we're not seeing significant increases. There are, to the degree, if the council needed to go back and find adjustments, for instance, if we are looking to reduce overall spending across the budgets, in the general fund side, you're probably going to have to focus on some of their ongoing operating expense initiatives, and those are summarized on page 7 of the packet. And you'll see pretty much there's 3 buckets, mostly within what we would call the climate change arena, including the clean energy programs, the building and transportation programs, and then the equitable inclusive climate engagement. So these are areas, ongoing expenses for these, but to the degree there were cuts needed, my suggestion would be that we would, if we identify what that level of cut needed to be, we would ask DEP to go back to these operating expense areas and see if they could reallocate spending in those areas. Staff is not recommending that at this time, since we don't have a target reduction, if you will, for the DEP general fund. It's going up only marginally. The changes that you are seeing are actually noted on page 6 of the packet, and are adjustments that are needed in order to just continue operations as they are. So from the general fund perspective, staff does not have a lot to go over this year because there isn't much change.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So as you noted, there is not a whole lot of change, but I have a few questions about some of the new expenditures. And so appreciate Director Munger and your team and Ms. Kogel-Smucker as well. Questions about some of the climate communication and broad-scale communications. There is the $148,000 for climate communication and public engagement, and then the $230,000 for broad-scale communication and stakeholder engagement. Ms. Kogel-Smucker, can you?
That's in the NDA.
Yeah, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know if there were questions about the general fund DEP budget.
No.
Okay, because
Let's keep going.
Oh, okay.
I was jumping ahead.
Yeah, regarding the NDA, I did want to mention that the NDA is recommended at the same level as approved. However, last year the council approved some consulting dollars that were considered one-time in nature. So for an apples to apples, budget comparison, the one-time funds would be removed in the FY26 budget, and then if they're added back, that would be considered an enhancement. So that's what I think Chair Glass was referring to for the climate change NDA. We do have, I'm just looking for on page 13 of the packet, we break out how you get to the FY26 total, the $718,000. That number is the same as 25, but the communication piece that Chair Glass mentioned, the $230,000, the way it was framed last year was that this would be initial work and that it could well lead to other work, but that it was being considered one time. So with that framed, I think now we can ask the department or ask the climate officer to speak to the work intended for that in FY26.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Glass. Sarah Kogel-Smucker, Climate Change Officer. So to address your question, for context, the Climate Change Planning NDA is intended to be instrumental in accelerating climate action. or initiating interdepartmental coordination and climate action that would be difficult to fund or slowed down to fund by any one budget. And so that ongoing work differs from year to year. Some examples from the past year were funding the Good Food Purchasing Program, where DEP facilitated the Department of Corrections to do a life cycle analysis of its food purchasing and make recommendations for more sustainable and just purchasing, that they're going to get the recommendations and intend to implement. So that's one example. Another example, to get to your question, is the Climate Smart campaign that was launched this past year. So we heard a lot of feedback that residents, didn't know where to start, or there was county resources for climate action in a lot of different places, but they weren't consolidated in one place. And so Climate Smart gives 15 easy everyday actions residents can take to be more climate smart in their day-to-day lives, and also connects them to county resources to do it. It sort of is an umbrella to departmental programs and actions. So that sort of goes under the additional 230,000 that we did use some consultant support. We also used a lot of internal resources. We're using largely internal resources going forward. So for example, all the Earth Day activities related to Climate Smart, we have used internal print shop and design to get it ready for the Earth Day we needed. So there's ongoing coordinated climate communication to pull together and make more effective departmental climate communication actions programs. Separately, the pilot of broad-scale data-driven behavior change is intended to look at information we need to change residents' behavior in key areas in the climate action plan, and then get data and information that departments can use in their ongoing communications. So our initial pilot is focusing on transportation mode shift, and the pilot is underway. The additional funds next year would be intended to scale up and implement recommendations of that, and then also analyze it. We have indication from DOT that this will be data and information that is well timed right now because they've completed Right on Reimagined. And so we have, sort of general information about what residents are looking for, and much more targeted specific information piloting on specific bus lines will help supplement that and make communication go more effective. So that's the difference between the two buckets of communication.
Everything you just outlined, I support and agree with. The questions I have is how do we go about further achieving those goals? And let me continue where you left off, right? Talking about the Department of Transportation and Right on Reimagined and mode shift. We absolutely want to get people out of single occupancy vehicles and get them into public transportation. This committee is fully supportive of it. I've been supportive of it for decades. I am skeptical as to whether or not these particular funds are necessary to do that, because, as we will be discussing next week, the county executive has proposed free ride-on in this budget. There is nothing better for publicity than to say buses are free than to tell people to get into a bus. I don't think we need to add more money for publicity and marketing when everyone will know, and it will be in every media, that our buses are free, and you'll hear all of us singing to the hills about it. And so I don't think it's necessary to use money to promote that good deed and goodwill. And so I have questions, right, about the utility there. The other aspect regarding the climate needs and residents asking about switching over to becoming more greener and utilizing more efficient items at their disposal. This committee spent a year working to get BEPS regulations passed. And part of that meant bringing on $68 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. In our conversations, in my conversations with the Green Bank and Director Munger and I think Ms. Kogel-Smucker, the three of us will be at a conference tomorrow talking about the green bank and how Montgomery County residents can go green. I think the green bank is the vehicle to do that with the $68 million that they are going to be using to disseminate information to the entire county. I don't think that this one NDA in the amount that it is the necessary vehicle for it. I think there's redundancy in effort because we have such a big chunk of funds for the green bank with probably the biggest climate goal that we're all working towards. And I'm extremely proud of this committee for doing a year-long work to get the council to unanimously support building energy performance standards. And so there's a vehicle to drive that. I think the goals set forth within these two items are absolutely worthy. They are being achieved. They're being achieved in other budgetary ways. And so as I look at this whole budget, I am skeptical, I am dubious of any fee and tax increases, which means we need to find other cost savings. And because there are budgetary items that speak to these areas, I would like to put these on the rec list for broader communication, for broader conversation with our colleagues to see if they agree. I assume that they agree with the goals, but as someone who is skeptical of any revenue enhancements above what we've already generated, we need to find cost savings. And so I'm going to motion to put these on the rec list. Seconded by Councilmember
Just
Stewart.
to clarify, on page 13 of the packet, are you referring to both the 148,000 and the 230? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
So seconded by Councilmember Stewart.
That was my question.
Okay.
So in terms of, first of all, understand absolutely that it's a tight budget year, and that's where you see mostly continuing services and climate change. Again, absolutely understand that the council intended the pilot to be one time. I would ask you to separate the 230,000 and the 148 because the climate NDA is, and this goes to what I was saying in the beginning, the climate NDA is flexible in implementing. This is, generally how it's intended, where opportunities arise. So a couple of more examples from the past year, the climate NDA funded an electric vehicle study that analyzed 30,000 sites for electric vehicle chargers, is prioritizing the sites and analyzing the feasibility of the top 20 so that we are well poised to leverage public and private dollars when they arise. So these sorts of opportunities where departments want to do things to accelerate climate change, and it's not necessarily in their budget, it's not a significantly, none of these are in the millions of dollars, but it provides the flexibility. And I think the proof is in the results that, since 2021 with the council's leadership, we have started 78 of the 86 actions in the climate action plan and made significant progress on and completed the 55. So again, absolutely understand the pilot, but on the base climate NDA, I would respectfully request reconsidering.
Yes, we'll parse out those two, absolutely. And again, I want to triple down on everything you said. Everything is spot on. Those are things that we have worked very hard towards. Moving forward, as we continue pushing towards those goals, I continue to believe there are other avenues to achieving them. Namely, as we work towards energy efficiency and making sure that everybody in Montgomery County can tap into funds for upgrading, retrofitting their buildings. That is exactly what the BEPS regulation is to support. And that is exactly what the $68 million that the Green Bank has gotten and will be using, the $68 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. That's what they're going to be using it for. There's a huge pot of money to work towards those goals. And so it is not to say that this work will not be done. It is absolutely going to be done. I just believe this to be redundant and outside of, separate from that work. And then again, with regard to the transportation and DOT, the best publicity is coming from the Department of Transportation and Ride-On. Everybody will know about it. And from a communication perspective, we don't need to spend one penny to market something that everybody's going to know about. And so that's, again, I want all of those things to happen. I don't want taxes to increase. I want us to be efficient in our tax dollars, and I want the Green Bank to fully utilize the $68 million that the federal government has already given them. So, Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. When is the pilot scheduled to be complete?
We've had a bit of a delay since the pilot is being run out of PIO, and with changes in PIO, there's been a bit of a delay. We're getting an updated schedule, so we're now anticipating the spring.
This spring?
No.
No. Okay. So I think that just, again, fully supportive of this work and all the work that you're doing. We would not have okayed the one-time funds last year if we hadn't, but just given the budget constraints we have right now, I think it's wise to let's let the pilot finish and actually get the recommendations, look at what's happening with free ride-on, and then at another point come back to us. Now, I don't like mid-year supplementals, so I'm not saying, but I actually think that's the wisest thing really to do, because we will have more information in which to say, how does this fit into the overall plan of what the Green Bank is doing, what we're doing on BEPS, and we have the results. It is one of the reasons why we funded this as one time last year. So I just think we need to get it. In terms of the 148, the way that we're trying to structure our process this year is that we want to be 100% transparent in terms of what gets on the reduction list, the reconciliation list. If you want to provide us with more information, provide our colleagues with that as we're having conversations. So we have the recommendation from this committee will go to the full council. The full council will review the committee recommendations on that. So there are opportunities to continue this conversation on what you all see the need, particularly for the 148.
Absolutely. And again, the climate NDA is flexible, so we can certainly look at allocating less for communication. I can say that, everything I hear from departments and public and advocates is that coordinated communication that doesn't land in any one department, there's a real need for it. And it is, sometimes a heavy lift because everything is set up within the departments per Chair Glass's point. But I think zeroing it out, would miss out on some of the progress we've made, like Climate Smart, in pulling together a lot of separate departmental communication. But again, understood it's a tight budget year, happy to provide more information. The one thing I just briefly note is that my understanding from DOT is that studies have shown that free fares are really important for equity, but don't move the needle on mode shift without something specific additional intervention, because generally if you can afford to have a car, which is what we're trying to do, mode shift, get folks out of their individual cars, the cost of public transportation isn't cost prohibitive. So another reason for the timing of the pilot is to take advantage of all the publicity that Chair Glass is saying with potentially get hopefully free fares, and then also move the needle on mode shift, which the free fares itself from the studies that DOT shared with me won't do. But again, understood it's a tight budget year, just explaining that thinking behind it.
Well, and so I appreciate you elaborating on that. We will be talking about transportation demand management at some point in time, which is exactly the point that you're raising. And so again, there are a lot of these conversations that are happening outside of this immediate budget, because there is a regulation that is before the council right now and has been about how we do that mode shift. And it is transportation demand management. And it is a bill that a law that was passed in 2018 and still hasn't been implemented because of various reasons. And so it is part of a bigger conversation that we are going to have, and perhaps we pick this back up then for that one point. Thank you.
I have a, if I may.
Yes, please.
Rich Harris, Office of Management and Budget. I want to talk about the 148 that's in the base. Demand for money within the NDA, which is not that much. It's like minus the 230. I think it's 488,000, something like that. It's not a lot of money. Demand for it from departments is very high. So even if the direction from council is what that 148 is going to be spent on is not the best because someone else can do that. There's a lot of other things that departments want to do that 148 could be spent on. That, of course, could extend to the 230. Also, I just wanted to say demand for that money is very high. So even if you don't like that one thing, there's a lot of other stuff that could go on.
Yeah.
I would say this is why we're having these conversations. And so before it comes to full council, if OMB wants to send a memo to that effect so that when the full council reviews, we can take that into consideration.
Yes, thank you.
And I will add that, well, let me ask the GEO chair. Did you already have a conversation about the PIOs and communication?
We have not.
Okay. This is yet another aspect where there's nearly 24, 15 to 20 PIOs within the county. And if we're talking about communication and coordinated communication, it would be my preference actually to rethink the PIO area where we might have somebody on dedicated staff to do this, whether it's rethinking or combining forces within DEP and DOT, thinking about other ways to do that communication. We do have a built-in government department focused on communication. And so if that communication and coordination is not working, that's yet another conversation that needs to be had to figure out how to do this work.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that just a technical aspect of when we approve one-time funding, we look at that in the context of the entire budget and the revenues that we have to spend, and some revenues we have are one-time revenue versus full-time versus ongoing sustainability. So I think that looking at the 230 specifically as a new enhancement is the appropriate thing to do. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lovchenko.
Yeah, just what I'm hearing is that the committee is supporting both those items being on the reconciliation list, but that they're open to the executive branch offering up some different tranches within those, or alternative, or more detail as to how that might be spent.
More details, yes.
And we can, that
for
can then
full
be
council consideration.
That can then be
That's correct.
brought up at the council for discussion.
Yeah, and be happy to reconsider allocating to other demands, as Mr. Harris said. You know, again, there's tremendous demand on it, so if it's not towards communication, happy to reallocate.
Understood. Thank you. I appreciate my colleagues, and I appreciate all of you engaging, right? Because we are all in support of these. We've been making incredible progress, and there are things outside of these two line items that are doing that work. I'm going to elevate again $68 million from the Green Bank to do some of this work, and the Department of Transportation, who wants to make buses free, doing this work. And so there's a broader conversation about communication that we can engage in, but look forward to a revised proposal for future consideration. Thank you, Ms. Kogel-Smucker. Mr. Lovchenko.
All right, so the last item within this package is the Water Quality Protection Fund. There, the county executive is recommending a, so let me get to my numbers here. Yeah, there, the executive is recommending a 9.4% increase in that, in the fund. That's summarized on page 3 of the packet. But the details of what's in that increase are shown on, let me see, page 8 of the packet. So this lays out basically how you get to the $3.4 million change from FY25 to FY26. And what staff's tried to do in this chart is a careful use of the verbs. So you see the first several items are adds. And so those adds are enhancement adds. Those are something that we'll talk about a little bit more further down. But the rest of those items are really same services type of issues. A lot of what we see in the Water Quality Protection Fund is inspections and maintenance of various stormwater management facilities. And the inventory goes up substantially over time, or has gone up substantially over time. So the cost for those services to do the same thing basically you're doing currently next year also goes up. So you see a lot of that. Also, you're seeing a lot of the other cross-departmental type of issues, compensation adjustment, chargebacks. In the Water Quality Protection Fund, storm drain work in DOT is funded out of the Water Quality Protection Fund. So as that CIP and operating budget increases, that hits the fund. That shows up here. Park and Planning has water quality efforts funded out of the Water Quality Protection Fund in both parks and in the planning department side. So those chargebacks are shown here. And then finance, recall that the water quality protection charge is on the property tax bill, so there is a charge back to finance. And then the Office of Agriculture also has initiatives. So all of those combined are adding a significant portion to the budget this year. And then you have some of these other more routine items, personnel cost adjustments, annualizations, things like that. There is a 3% inflationary adjustment for nonprofits that you will see across county government in different departments. Then there's some puts and takes as you go through it. I think what the committee should really focus on for today is really the ads. And those are noted in Table 4 on the same page. The biggest of the ads has to do with the amended bag fee law. With the substantial change made to the bag fee, there is a inevitable need for education and outreach, both to the community in terms of utilizing reusable bags, and also the business community in terms of implementing the revised charge. This was included in the fiscal impact statement for the bill, so it's not a surprise, but it is something that is included in the Water Quality Protection Fund budget this year. There's significant demand for the Clean Water Montgomery grants. The requests far exceed the budget for that, so DEP has asked for additional funding for that. Once again, it's an add, it's an enhancement, so that's why it's on this chart. There's also an additional position requested for the maintenance compliance program. This would be an inspector that goes out when they identify a problem with a privately owned facility. That inspector would then follow up multiple times with the property owner to make sure that those problems are fixed in a more timely manner than if you don't have a new position to spread across a growing number of facilities. And then there's some internship support and administrative services support also noted as an add. I will note all these enhancements combined, about $600,000, is equivalent to about $1.65 on the water quality protection charge, ERU rate. Now the charge this year is recommended to go up by, I believe, $10.50. So it's, let me try to find that. That's correct? Okay. So about $1.65 of that is for these ads. And that fee and the fiscal plan for the Water Quality Protection Fund assumes that level of increase, which is about a 7% increase or so. That it assumes that level of increase across the 6 years. And partly that's because we are seeing additional debt-related costs on the capital side. You've already seen some of the chargeback costs from DOT and agriculture, finance, and park and planning. So over time, it is expected that those expenditures are going to increase in that fund. So the primary revenue source for this fund is the water quality protection charge ERU rate, which is paid by property owners on their property tax bill. The bag fee law also does provide some revenue to the fund. It's unclear how the new fee will impact revenues. There could be different puts and takes there. So that number is pretty close to, or is assumed to be pretty close for now until we have more experience with that. So really the area that could fund additional expenditures really is the charge itself. So that 1050 increase is what the executives recommended. It includes, once again, the $1.65 for these different initiatives. And I will say, if you take out the bag fee outreach, which was presumed, then you're down to $350,000, which is maybe about $1 on the charge. So with that in mind, staff is comfortable with the executive recommendation at this point. I think there could be some marginal adjustment to the rate if the committee is interested in doing that, but it's not going to be a big reduction because I think we do need to focus on the bag fee outreach, and that is the biggest of the enhancements.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Levchenko. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Levchenko. I did have some questions about, obviously, it was my bill, I support it. But even when we did get the fiscal impact statement, I did have questions at that time because I know that DEP had, after the Inspector General report, hired someone to start the outreach to the businesses and to start doing some of this work. So, obviously, I am supportive of it because I moved the bill forward, but I just didn't know, again, just looking at this type budget, if we revisited that 250, if there was any cost savings involved in that. So just wanted to unpackage that 250 a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Council President. So, I think a big part of the rationale here on outreach, as Mr. Levchenko noted, is that this is a different law, and there's a few critical components which merit additional outreach both to the business community and to residents. So, as you well know, it includes a bag ban. It's also switching to paper. It changes the tax structure, and it includes, importantly, exclusions for certain populations. So just to unpack that a little bit, when we talk about supporting businesses as they make this transition, we're talking about many of these are smaller businesses, and we're also talking about changes that may need to be made to the point of sale systems which they use to actually process the transactions. It's a large number of businesses, and it's also a complicated change that may require software and systems changes for those businesses. Also, I just want to flag that this is not an ongoing cost. This is the cost as represented in this budget is for this year. It would go down next year and then phase out in 2028. And so that's on the business side. And then in terms of outreach to the public, I want to underscore that our outreach would importantly focus on persons that are low income and people with disabilities to make sure that we're explaining this transition and what it means for them. So while we have been doing outreach work under the existing law, this new law has a lot of significant opportunities, but also implementation considerations that are going to merit an increased level of outreach.
Really appreciate that breakdown, Director Monger, and I hope my colleagues will support keeping this in the budget and not adding it to the reconciliation list. Thank you.
Just to clarify, because it's Water Quality Protection Fund dollars, it would not go on the reconciliation list per se. It would be a decision by the council whether to include it or not in the budget, and then the charge would be adjusted accordingly.
Thank you for that discussion. It really helped. So I think that I fully support the 250, and I appreciate your emphasis on the outreach to businesses, because this is when we had the discussion of the bag tax, it was one of my concerns is that very often, particularly for small businesses, the first time they know that they're not complying with the law is when they've been dinged that they aren't complying with the law. That's the first time that they've ever even heard of the law. So I just really appreciate that. I do have a question about the additional position, and just wondering if you've included that in your lapse calculation, assuming they're not going to be hired on July 1.
Hi. Again, Rich Harris, Office of Management and Budget. The position Sorry, which position are you asking about?
In the new there's a new position.
New position in fiscal 26.
Yeah, right.
That like all new positions, well, almost all new positions are assumed to be lapsed for 3 months, just the time it takes to hire them. That includes this one.
Just confirming. Thank you.
Yes.
Doesn't seem like there are any other comments. Director Munger, do you want to speak to these items in general?
Thank you, Chair Glass. John Munger, Director of DEP. Still John. The only thing I'd like to add is that across all of our programs, even in tight budget years, we're really proud that we're maximizing existing resources to advance our important mission. So we've highlighted a few of these examples. I think when we talk about the water quality protection charge, it's also important to talk about how strategic we are in making sure we're focusing on how we're particularly supporting equity across these programs. So, for example, when we talk about the types of grants we work on in coordination with congregations, we plan to direct 70% of our outreach and education projects in engagement focuses with underserved communities. So, I think our water quality protection programs in particular, although we work on this across our entire department, are incredibly focused in really specific ways on making sure these programs are supporting our equity emphasis areas. So we thank the council for your leadership and support on these issues.
Thank you. Thank you to you and your team as well. The budget, over the last number of years, there have been fits and starts with the DEP budget itself, and so the accommodations and the requests that you've made, and with the understanding and appreciate Councilmember Stewart asking about the bag fee and the need for that, recognizing we appropriated funds on the front end when the bill was passed, but the ongoing need is there to communicate with everybody, especially the businesses, which makes a lot of sense. So not hearing any objections on these. I think that is it, Mr. Lovchenko, for this.
Yeah, just to clarify, given that discussion on the budget side, the assumption going forward is that the committee is supportive of the water quality protection charge ERU rate as recommended by the executive. That will be a separate action in mid-May by resolution.
Yeah, and as you note that, let me just ask one more question, and it's about the grants. Clearly the need is there, and we want to support all the community organizations. This additional $150,000, how many more organizations do we expect to be able to get support for the stream cleanups and all the other good work that they do?
Sure, I'm going to turn to my colleague Amy Stevens to provide some more specifics, who does a terrific job running our watershed restoration division.
She does. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Amy Stevens, Chief of the Watershed Restoration Division. So we see about an average of $50,000 per grant that we issue. So it should get us 3 more grants dedicated to this work. In the, we continue to see an increase in these requests for grants by nonprofits around the county. So we believe this will help support additional implementation in outreach and education.
Is this to enhance some of the operations already underway, or are we going to include more watersheds for local cleanup?
It would be more. It would be more work. It would be more grants being able to be issued within the year.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for this. So without objection, we'll support all of our recommendations within items 5 through 7. And then that brings us to agenda item 8, which is the FY26 operating budget for the Department of Environmental Protection, Recycling, and Resource Management Division, the Solid Waste Collection and Disposal Funds, which include the solid waste service charges, and the FY25 to 30 amended CIP for the Material Recycling and Biological Treatment Facility. And this might be the last item on today's agenda, but I think it's probably the biggest item on today's agenda. And the FY26 proposal is a steep increase in DEP's solid waste budget, and it is driven largely by short-term maintenance at the resource recovery facility and also early investments to support long-term waste management infrastructure, really important goals. And at the same time, we're seeing the service charge increase sharply, especially for small businesses, for multifamily properties and for homeowners. And those fees will change as proposed from $631 to $1,430 for small businesses and $310 to $419 for single-family homes as proposed. And so it's important to look at the long-term proposal for what these funds are to support, but we also have to look at it in the context of today, in addition to the various tax proposals that have been requested, the other fees outside of this that have been proposed, and some of the largest items in this budget appear to go towards short-term repairs for the incinerator, the amount of about $35 million, and about $12 million in pre-construction costs. And I know there are amendments that have been proposed that we can get to in a few moments, but there's a lot to digest here. And I suspect we will not have enough time today to talk about it all, but we're going to get as far as we can in this conversation. We've allocated time at a future hearing, I believe next week or the week thereafter, to continue the discussion. But this is a very meaty topic with a lot of important decision points for the future of Montgomery County and the future of waste management. Let me turn it over to Mr. Levchenko for any overarching views.
Yeah, and page 3 of the packet has a summary chart of the two funds, the collection fund and the disposal fund. As you said, there are a lot of issues, and we do have a second meeting scheduled for May 1st, for any follow-up items. So keep that in mind. But there are some things I think we can hopefully settle on today so that they don't have to sort of wait for some of these other issues. And just to summarize on the cost side of things, as you can see with the collection fund and the disposal fund, the collection fund is far smaller and a bit simpler to work through. The collection fund itself is recommended increase 5.3%, but really the dominating expenditure in that fund are the residential refuse collection contracts, and those are recommended increase about $827,000, and basically to continue the services that they're currently providing. With that, if you were to take that number out of the collection fund cost difference, it's actually down slightly because of some technical adjustments in the fund. There are no enhancements noted in the solid waste collection fund. And given that, staff feels that on the collection side of things at least, staff's comfortable recommending approval of the collection fund as recommended by the executive.
Okay.
Now the disposal fund, much bigger, a lot more issues there. So we do want to talk more about that.
We do.
That has, if you look on page 6 of the packet, the budget change chart, the one that we've seen on several budgets today. This breaks out basically the $43.6 million increase assumed in the solid waste disposal fund operating budget. And once again, all of these costs, none of them, you notice, none of them have the verb add or enhance. They are all increased cost or other types of charges. But obviously what sticks out is the first item, the increased cost resource recovery facility. That is the short-term capital work that Chair Glass referenced in his earlier statements, the $35.5 million. That would also be followed on in FY27 by another $29 million in costs. And the intent of that is to ensure that the facility can operate safely and effectively under permit for the next 5+ years under the contract extension. Now, that's not the only increase. You do have other items here. Particularly of particular note, the out-of-county haul disposal is also increasing. This is based on cost or contract cost increases, both for non-processable waste that has to be sent out of county. It does not burn well at the incinerator, so it goes out of county. And also the ash disposal from the incinerator, we're seeing cost increases in that. So that's the other, it's albeit much smaller than the RRF cost increase. It's still a significant increase overall in the budget. And then you have some other cost increases on the I mentioned the collection contract increases. On the disposal side, we have the residential recycling contract costs. That's countywide, and so we're seeing some increase in that as well. And then you have what I would argue are a bit more marginal increases over time. The debt service issue is what it is, as we have debt service costs building in the fiscal plan. They do have to be accommodated in the operating budget. And then you have a number of other more incremental costs we can talk about. But the other costs that you're not seeing here that does affect the solid waste charges, you referenced this earlier as well, the MRBT CIP amendment. This is the new processing method that the executive is supporting as an amended project. The initial pre-construction work would be funded with current revenue in the solid waste disposal fund. So though it doesn't show up in the operating budget, it's hitting the same source of funding that the solid waste charges support. So that $12 million increase that was referenced in FY26, that adds on to the costs here, the $43.4 million increase. So that 43.6 plus the 12 million is what the solid waste charges then have to accommodate within their fiscal plan. And then those costs, they're also assumed to be 12 million in costs in 27 and in 28. So that project is included in this packet for discussion because it's all part of the same universe of charges. So sort of with that in mind, the challenge going forward is we have a lot of moving parts. We have the broader issue of the council and the executive agreeing on what the long-term disposal method will be for the county. The executive for a number of years has indicated his support for moving away from the resource recovery facility, and we do expect to get a consultant report soon that is looking at alternatives to that, that the council can dig into. Unfortunately, it's late in the budget process, so we're in a position where we have to do some FY26 budget actions that maintain the council's flexibility, maintain the resources needed in the solid waste disposal fund, but also allow the council to have a more thoughtful discussion about these alternative disposal methods going forward and how it wants to move forward. And so that is a bit of the challenge here.
Right.
The solid waste service charges appear on property tax bills, and the property tax bills go out early in at the end of this fiscal year for the calendar year. So we don't have an opportunity mid-cycle, if you will, to change our mind about what we want those solid waste charges to be. So the council needs to decide what it wants to support as during this budget, and then we live with that for FY26, and then revisit the charges next year. So that also factors into it too. On the expenditure side, as I noted in the packet, the council hasn't even been briefed on the MRBT alternative disposal method. As I mentioned, we hope to have a fuller discussion after budget on that. So it's difficult to imagine the council supporting a capital project to move forward with $36 million before it's had that discussion of where this fits within the alternatives and what the decision points are and how that process would be moving forward. So we'll have to decide how to deal with that CIP amendment as well as part of the FY25 through 30 CIP amendment process. So that's a moving part as well. So I think I've highlighted a lot of moving parts. I did want to give DEP a chance to talk as well. I know we did get some correspondence from the executive earlier today, very much on point to the discussion we're having now.
Right.
So I did want the director to talk a little bit about that, and also their perspective on the sort of the bigger picture of the 26 budget and where we need to end up, at least initially, until the council can revisit the bigger picture.
So thank you, Mr. Lovchenko, for framing the discussion. I think you did a great job of highlighting all the moving parts, about highlighting the information we have and the information we do not have. My understanding, as you just noted and I alluded to earlier, there's more information that just came out this morning. I have not been able to look at it because I've been chairing this committee, but I'll turn it over to Director Monger to share the breaking news with us.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Glass, Council President Stewart, and Councilmember Balcom. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss the County Executive's recommended FY26 operating budget for recycling and resource management. That's a hot topic this year, but I just want to put this in context that every year the county processes hundreds of thousands of tons of waste and recyclables, and we deliver dependable, reliable, and effective and environmentally responsible solid waste and recycling service to meet the expectations of businesses and residents. The County Executive's recommended budget, as you know, for FY26 includes funding that's necessary to keep the system operating safely and reliably. It includes increases in the system's benefit charge, or SBC, to reflect essential repairs at the resource recovery facility, and DEP has provided the council with a document with additional background on the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, through which these projects are funded, and the importance of sufficiently funding it through that fund, and you'll find that material in your packet this morning. As you know, the contract with ReWorld for the operation of the RRF was set to expire in April 2026. Transitioning the county's MSW, or Municipal Solid Waste Management System, is very large and complicated in terms of a project. It requires careful consideration of alternatives and their impacts to residents, businesses, and the environment. And the county spent recent years, as was noted, collecting information to enable a data-driven decision on the path forward. To ensure continuity of operations, the county negotiated a limited 5-year extension contract until April 2031, retaining the ability to terminate that contract early for convenience, as in the original agreement. In order to extend the operation of the RF during this period, certain repairs are needed to keep the equipment running effectively. And while you have more information on this in your packet as well, just to give you a few examples, the county, the Waste Authority, and an independent third-party engineering consultant reviewed the proposed list of projects and pared it down only to those projects that are critically necessary for the safe and reliable operation of the equipment. So this is not a wish list by any means. But to give you an example of what some of these look like, various boiler and water wall tubes are needed for safety and reliability. Auxiliary gas burner repairs are needed for emission control. Baghouse replating and duct replacement is needed for emission control, and crane work is needed for reliability. I want to also note that we have an integrated solid waste management system in the county, and some of these dollars are also dedicated for necessary repairs at the county's transfer station in Durwood. Approximately $5 million in the amended request would be for work at the transfer station. Really coincides with an unprecedented budget situation in challenging economic times. To temper the impact of these costs in FY26 and 27, the department's identified savings in FY25 that can be used to fund some of these costs, and has worked to spread projects and associated costs out over a longer period. What does this mean? It means that for FY26, we've proposed an amended reduction of $7 million, and that would also translate to $11.8 million in FY27, with $14 million shifted out to FY28. Through these actions, the increase in the SBC can be significantly curtailed in FY26 and 27. The FY26 single-family rate would be reduced from the originally recommended $407 per year to $396 per year. Again, that's an annual cost. The multifamily rate would be reduced from $39 to $34, and the medium category non-residential rate would be reduced from, and just as a reminder, when we're talking non-residential, it's a formula-based multiplier, which is based on the volume of waste and square footage area. But for the medium category, it would be, that multiplier would be reduced from 1,294 to 1,175. And as you noted, this was work that the department's been working on over recent weeks, and that information was transmitted to council this morning to the committee and your staffs. I want to note that, as was mentioned, a small portion of the recommended SBC reflects costs for the design of an alternative MSW management system. This system, known as Materials Recovery and Biological Treatment, would extract recyclables from the waste stream to return to the market and also stabilize the remaining organic fraction in the waste stream, thereby reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Bless you. This system was identified as the preferred alternative in the analysis of MSW system alternatives provided to the county because it ranked highest in terms of our ability to divert more waste and reduce our carbon footprint. As we briefed you on previously, a shift to an alternative MSW system takes time, and the initial design work for the system would need to commence in FY26 in order to secure this alternative system by the end of the current RF extension. The county remains committed to improvements in our MSW system, and the department is open and continues to evaluate near-term improvements to our system. It's important to note that near-term solutions would not change the need for the FY26 funding included in the CE's recommended budget. The county is at a critical point in our effort to secure long-term sustainable management of waste. It's a key component of our broader Aiming for Zero Waste initiative, and we really appreciate the time this morning to present. We will continue to work with council to decide on a pathway that continues to serve our residents and businesses here in Montgomery County. Look forward to addressing any questions.
Thank you,
if you have any.
If we have any. Yes, wishful thinking. Appreciate that summary about the difficult task that lays ahead. Mr. Levchenko, in framing this, talked about an analysis that is currently ongoing to be able to create a path forward. We do not have that analysis, which would be very beneficial to us before we start making investments to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Can you share with us what the timeline is for that analysis, when we will get it, and what you expect it might say?
Yes, thank you for the question. We have provided a preliminary briefing to the committee and staff based on the draft analysis. We're hoping the analysis will be finalized in the coming months, and we will certainly continue to share the information. But we do have a sense of some of the key parts of that analysis, and as I noted in my previous words. One of the primary takeaways of that analysis is that the preferred alternative system would be adding advanced waste processing technology, which would allow us to significantly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from our waste processing systems, in addition to diverting significant amount of waste. But we will continue to, of course, share that information as the report is finalized with the committee.
Do you know when we'll be able to get that report?
Sure. We expect it will be finalized in the next month or two. So we're talking near term, but I also just want to note that importantly, that report is referring to long-term systems options that the county has at its disposal, which is a different issue than what is being requested and reflected in the FY26 budget, which primarily focuses on the need for continuity of services for our existing MSW system. So I just want to separate those two issues out for clarity.
Correct. Two of the many moving parts right? And so I just want to I'll pick up on that last point. I had said in my opening comments that the fees that are being proposed for small businesses go from $631 to $1,400, and for residents from $310 to $419. The increase in those fees, can you parse out how those increases are being allocated? To the point that was just raised, there are fees that need to go to the ongoing maintenance, and then there are fees that are going to the future planning for a facility. So elaborate or demystify where these fees are going. Exactly, yeah.
Sorry. No, you just turned it down.
Sure. So, yeah, just to put this in context, and I'm not sure what page of the packet this is noted on, but I know it's in there. But for context, the amount of dollars that's included in the budget for the advanced waste processing system, and it's noteworthy to note that the funds are just to start planning and designing that system, is $12 million. Thank you. Whereas the costs associated with the short-term repairs to the existing system, as amended in the amendment that was provided hot off the press, would be $28.5 million for FY26.
So the news of the day, while we've been in session, is the originally requested $35 million for maintenance is going down to $28.5 million?
That's correct, for FY26.
Okay. So two questions come from that information. First, what happens if that $28.5 million is not allocated? Because the long-term goal is to close that facility. And so let me ask the more important question: why are the investments being made to the tune of, at least this year, $28.5 million, with tens of millions of dollars in years ahead, if the plan is to close the facility within 5 years?
Sure. Thank you for the question. As I noted in my remarks, the types of projects that are included in the budget request for this year are very much limited to those that are necessary to maintain reliable and safe operations of the facility and to ensure continuous processing of the county's trash stream. So these are the types of projects that failure to do so would jeopardize our ability to fulfill this critical public service, and essentially could lead to disruption in service that could be the precursor to health and environmental risks should there be a disruption in existing service. So the projects, and as I mentioned, an additional document is included in your packet which explains how the list of projects was developed based on independent third-party engineering analysis and how it was also negotiated. And then the hot news of the day, as you said, is that we've actually readjusted the schedule to relieve budget pressures in FY26. But just to put these in context, these projects are only those that are critically necessary for the short-term continuation of the existing waste system that we have in place.
Last question for now before I open it up to colleagues. So the $28.5 million that is now being requested as of this morning, last year only $200,000 was requested. Why such an astronomical increase over 1 year if this has been an ongoing need and the will or interest to close the facility has existed for a very long time?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So as you're aware, the county, and with the assistance of technical consultants, has been evaluating alternatives to the RRF and continues to do so, and that includes analysis of the cost and timing needed to implement an alternative system. Transitioning this system, which manages approximately 600,000 tons of waste a year from across the county, is a complex and multi-step project. During the period during which these options have and are being evaluated, for obvious reasons, the county has avoided making repairs and replacements at a facility that would go beyond the immediate necessity for the short-term continuation of the facility, given the commitment to closure of the facility and transitioning to it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Just Councilmember Malcolm.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion today, but thank you for being available we've been having this ongoing discussion for a while. It's a very complex decision and a monumental decision. And so we're not just discussing the now $28 million in operating in a $12 million or $36 million pop to the CIP. We're talking about what the county is going to do with its solid waste for the foreseeable future. And we still don't know how much it's going to cost. So when we look at the when we look at the remedial repairs, so we're down to 28 for FY26, but the cost is still $64 million. We're still going to spend $64 million on the remedial recovery. But we don't have any idea how much the MRBT is going to cost in the future. We know you're asking for $36 million, 12 over the next 3 years, but we don't have an idea of how much the system's going to cost. And to the point of we should not be having this discussion about what we're going to do with our solid waste in the future in the confines of annual budget deliberations. It's just not fair to well, certainly we have been talking about it for a long time, but there are 7, 8 others who haven't been involved in this conversation. And we're going to, whatever recommendation that we provide, we're going to ask our colleagues sight unseen to agree with us and believe us. And so it just puts us in a situation where we just don't have all the facts. And I know that you are perhaps as frustrated as we are about where we are. We should have been having, the prior council should have been having this discussion for the past 5 years. The county executive made a claim that he was going to close the incinerator a long time ago. The day he made that promise was the day he should have started talking about how that was going to happen. So I'm terribly frustrated with where we are on that. But as Mr. Levchenko said, we need to make decisions. And so I do have a couple questions that I'll just ask. From the remedial work that has to be done. So the shift to the small shift to FY25 dollars, is that going to impact? So that's not going to impact the fee. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And the shift to the $27 or $28, we will be having this discussion again in FY28 for a potential increase.
That's right.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. And then Chair asked about, could some of the remedial work not be done? I appreciate your saying it's not a wish list. We have to do it if we want to be safe, and I appreciate that. So part of this discussion that we've had ongoing is that reducing waste from the waste stream. So we haven't talked about that in this context. And so where are we with the composting facility, and when will that happen?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Council Member, and for your perspective. So I think of when we talk about our materials management system, there's a few different key categories. One is source reduction, so avoiding things from being in existence as trash in the first place. Thank you for your support of the bag law. That's a great example. By avoiding those from coming into the stream of products in the first place, we avoid it from ending up in the trash stream. There's also a number of recycling programs that the county already has in place, and you mentioned an important one when we talk about food that we're really eager to expand. The money that's, just to sort of put this in context, and I will come back to your question, the category of money that we're talking about today is for the third bucket, which is probably the least fun to talk about, and it's what happens with all the waste that's left over at the end of all that. And so they're obviously all connected, because the more that's in the first two categories, you have the opportunity to keep things out of the ultimate disposal path. So as you know, we have a pilot in place right now for food scraps that we're in the process of expanding. And with council support, we're also evaluating options for constructing a dedicated organics facility in the county that would allow us to expand organics county-wide instead of at the pilot phase.
And you answered the question I was then going to ask is when we look at the future, the MRBT, we're assuming that the countywide composting is going to happen, and it's going to reduce a significant amount of waste, right? That's the assumption that you're making.
These are all complementary policies, so that they each serve a different part of the system. And any reductions from the first two categories I described, source reduction and recycling, could lead to reductions. I think it's important that those volumes vary program by program and technology by technology. So we want to make sure that we're making those decisions that are informed by accurate projections of other jurisdictions' experience with those programs. So we're accounting for the appropriate volumes that we could anticipate being reduced by any given program.
I appreciate that. So I think that it adds to the complexity of making sure that all of those streams are happening as you are proposing them to happen. And then, so if we separate the repairs with the future MRBT, the decisions that we have to make the decision about the repairs. But that's separate and apart from the decision about the CIP funding. When we haven't had any briefings about this system, we knew that we've had a full council briefing on closing the incinerator and the extension, and I appreciate that, and I think that was certainly the right choice given where we were at that particular point in time. But we haven't had a briefing on what we're going to do long term with our trash. And I feel like we're in a position where we're having to make decisions without full information. And I'll yield at this point in time.
Thank you, Councilmember Buckham. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I think you'll hear a similar theme across it today, because it's just, these are really hard decisions to make. And we started our session a number of hours ago talking to WSSC about their fee increase, which we all have said is desperately needed just to get clean water to people. So these are basic necessities. We've talked about a number of other fees. We've, unfortunately for Ms. Kogel-Schmucker, looked at her budget with a fine-tooth comb and was, discussing whether or not to keep in or keep out $148,000, which in the grand scheme of our overall budget is really not that much. But the reason we're doing this is because of where we are right now. And I think the frustration you hear here is that this could have been prevented or spread out. And I know that many of you, and Kelly, you're brand new, and even Director Monger, this started before you, but it is so frustrating to have a county executive who has been talking about closing this incinerator for so many years, and for this to land on us this year in such a huge way, given all the other things that we are looking at right now. And so I think that's the frustration you're hearing, and why it's showing up as we're talking about other budgets and things that we may want to do, and not to confuse what is a fund versus operating costs. But when people open their property tax bill, they're going to see all of these things go up at a time when our families are struggling. And to put this in the broader context, this morning while we've been meeting, Moody's downgraded Washington, D.C. in their bond rating. The reason they gave was because of the dependence of Washington, D.C. on the federal workforce and their commercial vacancies. Montgomery County has the same threats.
if we jeopardize or are in jeopardy of a downgrade, that has repercussions for generations for us. So as we are thinking about how we're going to move forward, if we are downgraded, that increases how much we have to spend to borrow money and jeopardizes our plans in the future. So I just want to step back and put that into the overall context of what we're talking about here, because each bit of our budget, all these bits and pulls, are so critical this year as we're thinking about it. And these repairs, Director Monger, as you said, are necessary for public health and safety and all of those things. And I don't think we're disagreeing with that. We're just so frustrated that this is where we are, and what to keep the solvency in the fund, to keep us doing the bare minimum. This is what we're faced with. And so I don't have a question, but I do have a request that's kind of outside the budget process. But I just think as whatever decisions we're going to be making moving forward, I would ask that the DEP, the chair's okay, that we get a monthly status report every month on where we are with this. Because we've been hearing about this report that we're supposed to be getting for months now. And we still don't have it, and we're not going to have it in time to make the decisions about the CIP and planning for the future. So that's going to get kicked, but we're going to have to make those decisions now. So sorry for the soapbox, but I just think that I'd like to put that request in, because I think we need to start putting in place ways in which we can keep informed of how things are moving forward, so that this committee and this council can work in partnership with DEP, so that we don't end up in this same place next year, that we are putting in place the mechanisms we need, the funding we need, so that we can plan and move this forward without any more surprises to our residents. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate you, Council President, having the hearing that Councilmember Balcom alluded to, so that everybody was on the same page, everybody could ask questions, and quite frankly, learn as much as was possible, but there's still much more to learn. And so I have three more questions before we wrap up, because to the point that was just made, Councilmember Balcom and I have a committee in an hour or so on the Economic Development Committee to make sure that our commercial real estate and business sector is able to continue moving forward despite the challenging times. Director Munger, in the original proposal and what you shared about the need to update and make repairs to the incinerator, before this briefing it was $35 million, and now it's been amended to 28.5. What changed? If the rationale was for short-term safety, and now it's been reduced by $7.5 million, what's the rationale there?
The only thing that's changed is the schedule.
So is that to say that it's all amendable?
No, I'm in fact saying the contrary. The list of projects is unchanged and is still limited to the necessity of projects that are needed for the short-term operation of this facility. What we've done is essentially identified additional funds in FY25 based on revenue from electricity sales generation, so we could pay for some of those costs in FY25. And similarly, we were able to move some of the projects to later years. But the list of projects remains the same. It's just the order of the work that will allow for there to be an alleviation of rate impacts in FY26 and FY27.
Okay. I'd like an itemized information about the breakdown that you just shared. If there was found money in another department or another fund, is that what you're saying? No.
No. To be clear, the let me take a step back here. So to be clear, we've essentially changed the order of projects that will allow us to pay for some of the work this year. And that's essentially because the revenues that the county receives from the sale of electricity fluctuate with the electricity market. So in some cases, although we budget for a certain amount of revenue from the sale of electricity, we may actually receive more revenue than initially budgeted. In this case, that allowed us to use some of that funds to avoid some of the costs that we thought would initially have to be included in the FY26 funds revenue.
Okay. Next question. What happens if we do not approve those fees? The fee increases.
Sure. So as we talked about it before, failure to fund these repairs and refurbishments projects risks the ability to operate our current waste system and jeopardizes the ability to fulfill what's obviously a critical public service, and raises potential concerns for human health and environmental risks that would result if those came to pass. So
the fee increases that are being proposed and being earmarked for the incinerator repairs, because it's going to a few different items, but those that are being used in the immediate short term for the repairs, you're saying are needed for the basic operation of that facility.
That's correct.
Okay. And last question for me this morning. Those repairs you have requested come from fees. Can they come from general operating budget expenditures?
Thanks for the question, Chair. That question goes beyond the FY26 budget and raises potential financial questions that should be discussed with the Department of Finance. I'll also note that additional information on that question was included in your packet and was developed by the department in coordination with the Department of Finance. Okay.
I will say there is a memo from the Department of Finance in our report, our packet today, and I think this goes to why I raised the issue of our bond rating and our financial institutions, because we do have this fund and we need to make sure it's solvent and that this work is done and paid for through the fund, because that is how it is set up. So our financial institutions will review that and look at that. The reason I know about this is because it was the same reason why when we did the bring your own bag fee, we had to look at continuing the charge that we had with the bag fee because of the way the fund was set up for our stormwater projects and other things. So I know the Department of Finance has provided that, but again, we need to think about this in the bigger context of other moving pieces of our budget and how our financial institutions are looking at Montgomery County. And so that's linked to that as well.
Thank you. Dual hats, yes. Right? So important point to raise. And I just want to conclude by going back to the point that Councilmember Balcom noted. There are 8 other members who are not following this as closely as we, because they are following their own committee portfolios extremely closely. Given the information we have, the questions we've asked, and the information that is still outstanding, I think the next step would be to have a full council conversation on this for the betterment of the entire body. And hopefully by then we might have some more information. I will be able to better digest the amendments that just came in and follow up individually if I have more questions there. But I think we've gotten the information, as much of the information that we're seeking now, and now we need to have this broader conversation, as has been noted, about the future of waste management in Montgomery County in the context of our bonding, in the context of our fee structure, in the greater context of additional taxes that are being proposed and might even change by tomorrow. I'm not sure. But it would behoove the body to have a full conversation. Councilmember Bachmann.
Yes, thanks. Just one, I won't say one last question. One last question for this morning. So the CIP for the MRBT, that's planning, and that determination has not been made that this is the way we're going, right? The MRBT. I mean, there's still questions in play as to whether that is the solution that we're going with.
Thanks for the question, council member. So, based on the analysis that's been completed to date, we understand that the advanced waste processing technologies that you're asking about provide significant reductions to our carbon footprint associated with the waste stream, and also would allow us to pull significant materials out of the waste stream that have value. So the reason that's why this is included as part of this dialogue is because we know that the opportunity presented by these technologies is hugely significant when it comes to greening our waste stream.
So,
yeah, I will say, just to distinguish, the council itself as a body has not weighed in on what is the waste disposal path going to be for the next 20 or 30 years. We just approved a solid waste management plan that noted that strategies are being looked at that may allow for the closure of the resource recovery facility, but there's no formal council position on that.
Okay.
And that raises some of these issues that you've been sort of inadvertently going in circles in. You can't avoid it. That go back to the RRF. I think DEP's made a very good case about what work needs to be done if the facility is going to be remaining open for the next 5 years. But what about the question of what if the council were to decide, well, we don't really like the RRF, but we don't like the other options either. So let's keep the RRF open for the foreseeable future. Well, what does that do to the short-term improvements, if anything? Or alternatively, at the January briefing, some council members asked DEP, is there a way to perhaps close the RRF early to pursue some other interim initiative that would allow for that? And I know that DEP is looking at that, but there's nothing before us. But if you were to close it early, presumably that would also allow for some of these costs to be avoided. Most likely they would have to be redirected to whatever new initiative you have. But that's what gets at the difficulty of saying, yes, let's approve the short-term improvements for the RRF. We know they're needed because some of these other pieces are still moving.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The purpose of my question was, if we funded, for instance, do we just fund 12 million in 26 and not 12, 12, 12? We had a briefing earlier this week that we have a delta in the CIP budget that we need to fix. And so I just wanted to put that on the table, not to be answered today, but perhaps that's something we look at.
Yeah, just to note, as Ms. Stewart mentioned, we have the current revenue going towards that project is coming out of the Solid Waste Disposal Fund, and the bonds presumably would down the line if we were to move forward with MRBT. So it has its own affordability issues within the Solid Waste Disposal Fund, but it's not a broader spending affordability issue with regard to general obligation bonds. But the second point you make, though, what do we need to do for the MRBT project? That's going to be a council decision. What are they comfortable approving now, given we have not had a robust discussion about MRBT and whether the council even supports further planning work, much less moving into design and construction of something like that. There are a range of things the council could do. They could approve it as recommended by the executive and move forward with some of the planning. There are off-ramps they're looking at a design, build, operate type of model for this. So during the planning and design work, if the project as it's developing turns out to be far more expensive or less efficient than maybe the initial planning considered, then it could be stopped. But you would have already spent a certain amount of money to get there. Alternatively, the council could choose to defer discussion of the amendment until after it's had more discussion of the bigger picture. That would slow things down a bit. You heard that may have an impact in terms of having that work done or having the project ready to move by the time the incinerator would close at the end of its contract renewal. But I mean, the council could choose to wait on appropriating money to that project and assume that there is some delay in it. So those are all options that the council has now, and it's a matter of what is the comfort level that the council has with all of this, given where we are.
I want to thank you for the conversation because it is a really important conversation. And as you're hearing from us, it's a frustrating conversation to have to make these decisions in the confines of this budget when there is information that we do not yet have, but the decisions that we would be making today are decades-long commitments. And so I appreciate Council President Stewart agreeing to take this up at a full council, whenever that time might be within the budget. Soon. And let's make sure we have as much information as possible to provide. And I encourage staff to reach out to the 8 other council members to try to speak with them in advance of this conversation, because we cannot bring everybody up to speed in the 60 to 90 minutes that would be allotted at a full council session. And so there's homework to be done, but we got to get it done.
Just speaking of schedule, we do have the May 1 follow-up meeting on this topic. It sounds like you're saying skip that.
Yeah.
Let's find council time.
I think the committee has sufficiently had our conversation, and now we need to bring the full council in.
And in terms of full council, typically the way the schedule works, once we get through committee in early May, then that following week becomes all council all the time.
I defer to the council president to determine the schedule.
I don't have it in front of me now. I will have to work with our clerk and others to figure out the schedule.
She will make it happen.
We will make it happen.
Yeah, we have alerted folks that we expect this issue to take up more time than it did last year, certainly. So this, along with several other key issues for the council this year, will be worked into the full council schedule.
And so, Mr. Levchenko and Director Munger, the homework assignment that you have is to reach out to the 8 other council members to make sure that whenever the council president schedules this, there's sufficient time to get on their schedules for you to have these in-depth discussions.
Yep.
With that, thank you. We're adjourned.